So, Steve, one of the greatest things ever to come out of not only Gettysburg, but I would say the entire state of Pennsylvania, and I'm including Jim Thorpe in that, is
Jim
this.
Thorpe, wow.
Yes, Little Ground Top. Little Ground Top is, and Jimmy Stewart, I include him in that as well, okay? And he was a general. And a movie star. Little Ground Top is our delicious coffee. Take a sniff. Smell that, okay?
Little Ground Top?
Yes.
Wow, that was creative. Who thought about that?
That was us.
Oh, that smells good.
Look at this. Oh, that smells good.
The tasting notes are cacao, wildflowers, and toasted sugar. I smell that toasted sugar.
You smell that toasted sugar, don't you? Do you like coffee?
I do like coffee.
You're a big coffee guy.
I am a coffee guy.
Little Ground Top is available online. If you go to addressinggettysburg.com/cafe, you can even do a monthly or weekly or bi-weekly subscription to Little Ground Top. You just pay it and you spray it. No, pay it and forget it. Set it and forget it. That's what I'm talking about. They'll just send it to you. It'll pop in the mail. You'll be like, oh, I got another bag of Little Ground Top. And good, because I'm going through it so fast because it is so delicious. You can also get it at Bantam Roasters. You know where that is, right? Across from the Dobbin House.
I do.
And they have it in there, but I got to tell you something. They sell out within 3 days typically. So much so, they used to put 12 bags out. That's 12 pounds. Now they put 18 bags out.
That's 18 pounds. Yes.
That's right. And still, they are moving fast. So the best thing for you to do is go to addressinggettysburg.com/cafe and order it online so that you never waste a trip. Some people say, I'll get my bag when I go to Gettysburg. And they go in before they leave on Sunday, and it's all gone.
All 18 pounds are gone?
All gone. All gone. They put them out Friday night or Saturday morning, okay? And they're gone typically definitely by Monday. All right, and on a slow week, they're done by Tuesday, Wednesday.
You should start signing these bags.
You know what? I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
Where's the Sharpie? Do I have a Sharpie in here?
Yes, you do.
I do. Please hand me the Sharpie. I'm going to sign it. Because you know what? I'm giving this to you.
You even went Ron Popeil and set it and forget it?
That's right. Thanks for coming on, Matt.
I might resubscribe as a Patreon now.
All right, maybe you should, because I've been missing you. All right, and you know what, Steve? Because you come on the show and we don't pay, this is your gift, okay? There you go.
I wanted 18 pounds of coffee. I just get 1 pound?
Well, you can go buy the other 17 when you go over to Bantam Roasters, if they even have them on the shelf.
Are you still selling merch?
Yes.
In my suitcase, I've got the Reynolds shirt.
Do you?
That was the best design, by the way.
That was a good one. Yeah. That's good. Thank you for buying that.
Yes.
Anyway, 82 Steinware Avenue right here in Gettysburg, or addressinggettysburg.com/cafe. Little Ground Top, set it and forget it. Live.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg's Ask a Gettysburg Guide, and today we are talking about Lockwood's Brigade over on Culp's Hill, but also not over on Culp's Hill. They're kind of all over the place, and but their monuments are on Culp's Hill. Although, well, we'll find out if they have monuments elsewhere. I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. I've never been to the Gettysburg battlefield, so I do not know any of this stuff. That's why we have a licensed battlefield guide with us by the name of Stu Dempsey. Stuart Dempsey. We were debating this before he got here, and somebody said he prefers to go by Stuart. And I said, well, I was introduced to him as Stu. So everybody I know who knows him calls him Stu. And I called him Stu, and I felt bad. But Stuart, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And look, I've been called far worse things. So,
okay, fair enough.
In fact, just the other day. So, yeah, don't sweat it.
What, did somebody call you a name on a tour?
No, not on a tour. It had something to do with operating motor vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
And you know how that is with humans.
Oh, of course, I'm from New Jersey. We invented that.
We tell everybody they're number one.
That's right.
With the finger.
We show with the finger.
You're
exactly.
number one, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
You're number one in my book.
If I may, for a moment, take a little diversion here. Not diversion, a digression from our normal path. And we have a celebrity in our midst here, ladies and gentlemen, in the back. And I'd like to invite him in here just to say hi to you all. You know him as the commander of the 20th Maine here at Gettysburg, but we know him as Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. Colonel, why don't you come in? Come on in, Colonel. Here he is. Here, come on in. No, in here. Come in here. Say hi to everybody. This is a treat. There you go. Just say hi. You got him on. There you go. You put him on Mikey's camera. Walk over by Mikey there.
He won't bite.
Go ahead. He won't.
Too much.
I don't know. Look back here.
It's kind of scary.
I do bite.
Give us your real name.
Will.
Will. Okay, Will. Will portrays, you're 12?
Yes.
And you portray the Colonel Chamberlain.
Yes.
And you and I and your dad had dinner last night, and you were telling me something very interesting, that as a living historian, you do it a little differently than others, right?
Yeah.
Great. Mike, pull that mic over to him so he could be heard there, if you don't mind. And get close to that mic there, Colonel, and tell us, what is it that you do? How do you do it different than other living historians?
Most people.
Right into the mic.
Most people tell their story about after Gettysburg. I like to think that I'm Colonel Chamberlain on July 4th, right after the Battle of Round Top happened.
So you know Chamberlain up until July 4th, 1863, whereas another one might know his entire life.
Yes.
Is what you're saying. Yeah. And that's pretty cool. I like that. It's pretty clever. You could never go anywhere else, though. You have to stay right here at Gettysburg at all times. You could never go to Petersburg. You could never go anywhere else he's been, right? Yeah.
Don't go to Petersburg.
Don't go to Petersburg.
It's not going to end well.
Stay away from there anyway. Yeah. Okay, well, it was great to have you in here. It was great to meet you. And we're going to have you on the show later. I think you're coming back with your dad next month or something like that. We're going to try to have you in here, and we'll do a little sit-down interview with you, and we'll talk about Chamberlain. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Will. It was great to have you in here. Thank you, Will. Will, ladies and gentlemen. Will Chamberlain.
He's
Not Wilt.
How old is he?
12.
And he's taller than me?
And he's taller than you are.
Oh, Mike, that's a lot of people.
Aw. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, the phone number is 717-420-1978 if you want to call in and ask a Gettysburg guide. And also, if you don't want to call in, you can put your question in the comment section. $10 or more super chats will be noticed because they come in a nice bright yellow color, and we will read them on the air. And of course, if you're a patron, patreon.com/addressinggettysburg, you submitted these questions a year ago when we originally recorded this, and then my files got corrupted and we have to do it all over again. So Stu, let's get into Lockwood's brigade. They're, I guess, considered part of the 12th Corps, but they aren't part of the Army of the Potomac, right?
Well, they temporarily are
Yeah.
part of the Army of the Potomac. Their history with the Army lasts less than 21 days. So
Okay.
It's probably one of the shortest-lived brigades in the Army of the Potomac history, I imagine. Yeah, they're attached to the Army on June 25th, 1863, and when the Army crosses the Potomac shortly after mid-July, they are detached from the Army of the Potomac.
So where are they before they're attached to the Army of the Potomac?
Okay, so Lockwood's brigade, per se, wasn't really a brigade until June of 1863. This is to provide just a little contextual background here. Coming off the Battle of Chancellorsville and coming off of the departure of, by my count, around 27,000 men from the Army between Chancellorsville and Gettysburg because of the expiration of enlistments, 2-year New Yorkers, and all kinds of 9-month regiments as well depart the Army between those two battles. So what you have is an Army that has about close to 130,000 men going into battle at Chancellorsville that has dwindled to a little over 80,000 by late June of 63. And so Joe Hooker, still in command of the Army of the Potomac at that point, sent his chief of staff, Dan Butterfield, to both Washington and Baltimore to see if any of the troops in the garrisons there might be sufficiently up to speed to be incorporated as last-minute reinforcements into the Army. And several units that have a lot of fame at Gettysburg become part of the Army as a result of that. Standards Vermonters, the Pennsylvania Reserves, Willard's Brigade, Custer's Brigade, Farnsworth's Brigade. Those are all units that are added in the last week of June. And so on the 17th of June, Lockwood was ordered to assemble a brigade from troops in Baltimore and East. And over the next several days, he assembles ultimately 3 regiments that are going to be constituting his brigade here at this battle. And we can get to know each one of those in turn.
Yeah. Well, let's do that. So where are those regiments? What are they doing? And how is he assembling them into this brigade?
Okay. He's been given the authority by his department chief, which would have been General Robert Schenck, commanding the middle department at that point in which Baltimore was part of. And he's going to have the 3 regiments, the 150th New York, which had been part of the Baltimore City garrison since the previous autumn, and it actually had a pretty nice life as Civil War soldiering goes. They had nice wooden heated barracks that the men built in Baltimore, so they had a real roof over their head. They had regular band concerts. Local loyal citizenry would turn out to hear the band concerts, and they also, which I think is kind of an interesting sidelight, they did extensive training in street fighting tactics.
Oh, really?
Which is not something you encounter a whole lot of in the Civil War.
Right.
I mean, for one thing, very few Civil War fights are remotely urban, and by intention. I mean, the Army simply were not trained and configured for that sort of activity. But in the case of the 150th, it makes sense. You're garrisoning a city, and you're garrisoning a city that has a recent history of, problematic behavior.
Right.
That's what I was just going to ask.
Yeah.
Baltimore has a big part in why they're training.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes. This is not a random choice that you guys are going to go out there and practice urban fighting techniques. There's a purpose behind that. But again, I've encountered I'm sure there were others, but I cannot think of another Civil War regiment I've run across that had a lot of training in that. So it's kind of an interesting sideline. The regiment had come into being in the autumn, late summer, early autumn of '62, as a consequence of the Lincoln administration's big call up of 300,000 more men to serve for 3 years, and they're largely, almost entirely formed in Dutchess County, New York, so Poughkeepsie, Fishkill, that area, and their first colonel, Colonel Ketchum, young man. Kind of a go-getter. He was a gentleman farmer in Dutchess County, and he had served in the state legislature, supposedly one of the youngest state legislators in New York's 19th century history. He's 25 when he was elected to the state legislature, and he forms and is the first commander of the 150th. And really from the time that they leave Dutchess County, Baltimore's pretty much their first destination, and they are there until late June of '63. I would describe it in the days prior to this battle as a well-trained unit. Time will prove that it's a pretty well-led regiment, but lacking in any sort of meaningful combat experience whatsoever. Gettysburg will be their first time under fire.
How about marching experience? I mean, how did they get up here? They're marching, right?
They're marching.
Yeah.
Marching.
So were they quick? Were they slow?
They were tired and not quite yet fit for the role. And this is a problem across the board with all of these new units that get added to the Army prior to the Battle of Gettysburg. They'd been serving in essentially garrison functions over the last several months or more, and they're just not as fit as the guys who've been marching for a living in the Army of the Potomac. So all of these units in the 150th and their other comrades in Lockwood's brigade will struggle quite a bit with the lengthy marches that they're suddenly being asked to do. And of course, it's also at a time of year where weather conditions were pretty brutal as well.
Something we don't really think too much about, though. When you look at an order of battle and you look at units in the Army, and then you compare something like Lockwood's brigade or maybe even Stannard or some of these other units that haven't been with the Army on campaign in Virginia. And then you see something like what the 6th Corps does with their marching, or the 2nd Corps. And it's like they're very different. They're in the same Army, but they are not operating at all at the same level of movement.
Right.
No. To give my favorite extreme example of the war, on one of these late June marches, experienced veteran Army of the Potomac troops in Colonel Orland Smith's brigade, in one day they marched 38 miles. There is no way Lockwood's people could have done anything like that, and it would be unreasonable to expect that they could. So what these men talk about in their memoirs and their letters home and things, a lot of blisters, a lot of just sheer exhaustion, equipment straps cutting into the body. The New Yorkers, who actually leave us with the greatest wealth of primary source information on that brigade, the two Maryland regiments we'll discuss did not leave us with a lot, unfortunately, about their Gettysburg campaign service, but the New Yorkers did. And they describe how their grotesquely overstuffed knapsacks that they marched out of Baltimore with were very soon discarded.
Yeah.
One man talks about, I think it was the first or the second night under the stars. He said we were too tired from marching to learn how to set up our tents. So you can see how much field service they've had. You've been in the Army like 9 months and you still don't know how to put up your tent. So that's well, why would you when you're sleeping in a nice warm
in a nice warm barracks.
Exactly. But he talks about waking up in the morning after a rain squall and basically throwing away his blanket, his tent half, his overcoat, because all the stuff weighed 500 pounds as being wet. So these guys are not really up for the task they've been assigned. But they're earnest young men and they're volunteers, every single one of them. So they do their best, and I think their best ends up being pretty good.
And I don't know, forgive me if you said this already. What date did they leave to join the Army?
So two of Lockwood's regiments depart Baltimore on the 25th of June, and the last one departs the next day, the 26th.
So the two that left on the 25th were?
The 150th New York, aforementioned,
right.
And I think a more interesting from an unusual perspective, the other regiment is the 1st Regiment Potomac Home Brigade, Maryland Volunteers, which is a mouthful.
Yeah, it is.
To provide a little background on what all that means. So at the beginning of the war, in the summer of 1861, and think about how the state of Maryland is still in play, in the summer of 1861. Is it going to end up being a secessionist state, or what's going to happen there? So former governor of Maryland, Governor Thomas, I believe, obtained permission from the War Department to raise what he was going to call a Potomac Home Brigade. And it was going to be raised from personnel on both sides of the Potomac River, so Maryland and Northern Virginia, although the vast majority of the men end up being, unsurprisingly, Marylanders.
Right.
But the purpose of this brigade was to perform border security, infrastructure security, guarding key installations, guarding the C&O Canal, Potomac fords, stuff like that. And occasionally, rousting out the local secessionists or whatever. So the idea was to form 4 infantry regiments in this brigade, plus a cavalry unit as well. In the end, they formed 3 infantry regiments. A 4th never was created. But these were known as the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Regiments, Potomac Home Brigade.
Okay.
And one thing I'd like to clarify, and I try to clarify this every chance I get, sometimes folks get hung up on the word home in that title, like the Minutemen on Lexington Green, Home Guards, this kind of thing.
Right.
Definitively, they are not that. They were authorized as regular troops. They were equipped as regular troops, trained as such, and were expected to perform the same duties that any other regular volunteer regiment might be asked to do. So they were not home guards. They were not guys sitting at home with the fowling piece above the hearth, waiting for the rebels to come to town. They were regularly serving soldiers.
So I have a question on this one, because before I was going up to Culp's Hill to read from the Brigades of Gettysburg about Lockwood's Brigade, and I just had to get out of the studio. It's too nice out to be stuck in the
It's
studio.
a really, really beautiful day.
Yeah, it was. And Mike was on the phone with me, and I referred to them as the Potomac Home Guard, and he called them Home Brigade. And I said, well, where do I get Home Guard from? Because I could have sworn I've heard guides refer to them as the Home Guard. And then I'm looking in the brigades of Gettysburg, 1st Maryland Potomac Home Guard. Monument says brigade. What's the confusion? Where is this coming from?
The word guard seems to just be an invention.
Really?
It's never utilized in any of the correspondence regarding because they're not home. The term home guard absolutely conjures up the part-time soldier, the emergency soldier, the men of the Volkssturm marching out of Berlin in 1945.
Right.
It
really does. Like you think of it as guys that are just like hanging out at home, waiting for home to be threatened.
Not real soldiers.
But not real soldiers.
Right.
Yeah.
Are they raised and paid for by Maryland, no different than the other regiments of Maryland infantry, or are they?
Yeah, they're held as the same as any other regiment of Maryland volunteers.
So the fact that they are at home, that they're in Maryland, is just that's where they were needed at that time.
Yes.
Okay, so they could have been assigned to an army if needed.
Yes, and in fact, there's a short time in 1862 where they're serving in the Shenandoah Valley, in the northern part of the Shenandoah Valley under Nathaniel Banks. So they're not exclusively tied to serving in Maryland. I think it all just stems from the fact that when the brigade was formed, it got that name Potomac Home Brigade. Mm-hmm. And I guess just some folks who maybe aren't doing the full research assume that means like some kind of home guard thing. But again, I think it's don't get fixated on that home word.
Okay.
These guys are, as I said, regular state volunteers.
Okay. All right, and then the other one is 1st Maryland Eastern Shore. So I'm assuming they're from the Eastern Shore of Maryland.
Yeah, that's a sharp deduction there. Yeah. No, it's absolutely who they are, and in some ways they are similar to the first. I'm going to call them just the 1st Potomac Home Brigade, just to avoid using 40 words every time we want to talk about one regiment. They're sort of like the Potomac Home Brigade boys, but they're a more problematic regiment. So they were also formed in the late summer of 1861, also with the notion of internal security duty, specifically on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and they were recruited on the Eastern Shore of Maryland in those counties. What's that like Somerset, Caroline, those counties.
Okay.
And in this case, though, the men were promised by the War Department and by the enlisting officers who signed these men up that their service would be limited to the state of Maryland. And anytime they are asked to do something beyond that, there's an issue. Couple times in 1861 and 1862, detachments from the 1st Eastern Shore Regiment are sent to, in one case, to Delaware, to, I think, arrest a local secessionist guy, I think. And then there's another point where they're sent to occupy the Virginia counties of the Delmarva Peninsula.
Okay.
And in both cases, there are men in the 1st Eastern Shore Regiment who are like, no, that's not what we enlisted to do, man. We enlisted to stay in Maryland. We didn't enlist to go wandering into Virginia or Delaware, whatever.
Right.
And so what do you think is going to happen when they get ordered to the Army of the Potomac, heading for what is probably going to be a cataclysmic dance with the nemesis Army of Northern Virginia? Well, Company K says, no, we're not going. And 61 men are quickly discharged by the War Department. If I can be permitted the quote,
Sure.
I have a piece from somewhere in here from the ORs, from the 3rd volume of the ORs on the Gettysburg campaign, and this kind of addresses this a little bit. So this is from Headquarters 8th Army Corps. That's the Middle Department troops in Baltimore. The 1st Regiment Eastern Shore Volunteers was recruited in 1861 for 3 years or the war, but under authority from the Secretary of War and assurance from the recruiting officers that they were to serve only on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay. In the present great public emergency, this regiment, with others under General Lockwood, was ordered to rendezvous at Point Lookout on the western shore of the bay, and thence to proceed for duty in Baltimore. All the regiment, Colonel Wallace commanding, responded promptly to this call, excepting 61 non-commissioned officers and privates of Company K, who refused to obey. 30 of the men of that company, under the command of their captain, went with the rest of the regiment. The regiment subsequently marched as part of the brigade of General Lockwood, et cetera, where it became attached to the Army of the Potomac and is now in the field. In this state of facts, it is considered that those who hold to the strict letter of their agreement and have not a zeal in the cause of their country and a patriotism broad enough to set aside such narrow considerations in this time of great emergency are not of the stuff of which true soldiers are made, as are their companions of the regiment who have nobly taken the field for the general defense. And it is therefore ordered that the 61 men of Company K, now assembled at Cambridge on the eastern shore, be deprived of their arms and accoutrements, which are directed to be turned over to the ordnance officer of the 8th Corps in Baltimore. They will then consider themselves dishonorably dismissed from the service of the United States from this day. So that's
The wording, that's really interesting because they don't say that it's in violation of their agreement. It's almost saying, well, that was the agreement.
Yeah.
But these guys are being jackasses about it.
That's right.
right.
But it's
right.
a very, it's only 90 years removed from being a very American thing if you study the Revolution.
Oh, yes, very
Yes.
much
It's
so.
a very American concept of not leaving the state. That's not what we
That's
agreed
right.
to.
Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely not.
But this also seems to be, the Civil War seems to be the first time where Americans are starting to learn that even though when you sign up for something, your government says, oh yeah, you'll never be asked to do this.
However,
right?
Unless-
And then it's like, ever since then, it's like you just can't trust their word, you know. You have to be held to yours, but they don't have to be held to theirs.
I guess it's something like that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
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 It is
Yeah.
interesting, but it's also, we've done previous episodes on the Gettysburg Address using the word nation. You know,
Yes.
it's a very different concept than it was 90 years before.
Oh, yes.
True. That's true.
And it
Yeah.
seems like
Well, that's why the Civil War is so fascinating, because it's this transitional period between early America and what we are now.
Modern,
Yeah,
quote unquote.
yeah. Yeah, like, a lot of the original ideas and the original structure of the country was like good on paper.
Yeah.
But then the Civil War kind of teaches us, well, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it needs a little tweaking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
well, knowing where all three regiments come, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but we've talked about Lockwood a little bit, and I'm sure foreshadowing, we'll talk about his commission, but where is he before
Yeah.
he starts forming
That's where
this
we were going to
brigade?
go. Yeah.
Okay. So first off, Lockwood is serving in the Middle Department in the 8th Corps. He's a subordinate of the departmental commander, Schenck, who I mentioned. And prior to that, well, I guess just, you want some biographical
Yeah,
info?
yeah. Tell us about Lockwood.
Well, he's born in 1814, and that makes him 48 at Gettysburg. His birthday is August 17th, just like my Jack Russell Terrier. So he's not, hasn't quite had his 49th birthday by the time the Battle of Gettysburg's happening. My terrier is 14 and a half, by the way, and so in dog years, she's like way older than Lockwood.
Yeah. I had one. And she lived to 16.
Oh, that's really
Yeah.
good to hear, because I can't.
I know.
There's not enough Thorazine in the world when she passes. So yeah,
I know.
Yeah. Well, okay, Lockwood. So he attends West Point as a young man. Graduates about the middle of his class in 36. Yeah, class of 36, I believe it is. And let me check that because I'm old and sometimes I forget. Sometimes I forget stuff.
I'm starting.
Yeah, class of 36.
Okay.
He saw service in the Second Seminole War for a bit, but resigned, like so many Army officers in that pre-war period. He eventually resigns his commission and pursues civilian activities. But just a few short years later, he begins a lifelong association with the U.S. Naval Academy. So he goes from Army to Navy pretty quickly. He's acting as a professor of mathematics at the Naval Asylum in Philadelphia, which is the predecessor of the Naval Academy.
Okay.
And then just a few years after that, I think it's 1845, that the Naval Academy is founded, and he is one of the founders of the Naval Academy. And during his teaching life there, he teaches all manner of courses. Of course, mathematics, which is his thing, but also writes papers and manuals on infantry and artillery tactics, like for use in amphibious landing forces and things like that, for use in conjunction with naval forces, and astronomy and a couple other things, too. He's a kind of Renaissance man as far as that goes. But when the Civil War broke out, I guess the Army bug bit him again. And by the way, in the pre-war period, he also served for a time aboard the USS United States, where one of his shipmates was one Herman Melville.
Huh.
So there you go. That's his brush with greatness, I guess.
Yeah.
He'll have another one in 1864, and it won't go so well. And that's with Gouverneur Warren. So that's his other brush with greatness. But it's a more abrasive brush that time. But anyway, Lockwood raises the 1st Delaware Infantry at the beginning of the Civil War. And by the end of 1861, he's already been promoted to the rank of Brigadier General of Volunteers. And basically serves as like a sector commander within the Middle Department until he gets the call to organize this brigade and take them to Hooker's army. So he has no meaningful combat experience, at least not on land anyway. And yet I think he'll perform competently here. I think he'll perform as competently as anybody else, really. So that's Henry Lockwood.
Does he have any intimate knowledge or connections with any of those 3 regiments?
No, he does not. When he became a brigadier general in late 61, that severed his attachment to the 1st Delaware, which of course goes on to serve very well in the 2nd Army Corps for the rest of the war. But yeah, he never leads the 1st into battle. I think the 1st Delaware's first really big battle is Antietam, so he's already moved on by then. But yeah, Lockwood is definitely an egghead, I think you would say. Even kind of looks the part.
With the glasses.
Yeah, he does. He looks like a professor.
What a nerd.
Exactly the guy I would cast if I were doing a remake of The Paper Chase or anything. Maybe that reference will be lost on some younger listeners. But
that went over my head.
Okay. Wow, I'm really. I'm really damn old, man.
It's not hard to do for me. Everything goes over my head.
Here, Tad, we have a picture of Henry Lockwood. There he is.
Very professorial.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Look at those mutton chops.
Yeah.
What do you mean the dog ate your homework?
Exactly. 3rd time this week, sir.
So, okay, so he gets these regiments together. He's got his brigade. Now they're heading to meet Hooker's army. Where do they meet Hooker's army when they catch up to them?
So it'll be they first move out to Monocacy, and I think the initial plan was that they were going to remain at Monocacy as a garrison force as the Gettysburg campaign developed.
Okay.
To see if there was a need for a brigade of infantry there. But soon after, they move west of Monocacy, and it's in the Westminster neighborhood where they catch up to the Army of the Potomac.
Okay. And are they immediately attached to the 12th Corps, or what happens?
Their official attachment to the 12th Corps is ordered by new Army of the Potomac commander George Meade on the first day of his command, the 28th of June.
Okay.
At that point, Meade sends orders to all of his corps commanders, you're going to do this, you're going to march there. And one of those mentions is the 12th Army Corps is going to receive Lockwood's brigade as a reinforcement when it catches up. And that is, again, the problem is they have to catch up to these veterans who are setting a more cracking pace.
Yeah.
So you're assigned officially to the Army of the Potomac on the 28th of June. They don't really catch up to the 12th Corps until the morning of July 2nd.
Okay.
That's when they officially become physically attached to
But that's not even all of them, though. That's
no, that is the
two
regiments that departed on the 25th of June. And again, that's the 150th New York and the 1st Potomac Home Brigade.
Okay.
Which together, being regiments without a ton of experience, are still pretty large.
Yeah.
Over 600 each, I think.
Actually, the Potomac Home Brigade's over 700.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe it's the single largest federal regiment at this battle, if I remember correctly. So together, they really make a pretty fair-sized brigade. They make about 1,400 men between those two, 1,400 men between those two regiments. So it's not a small force by any means.
So the reason the who's that, Eastern Shore gets there late is because they left late. It's not because they're particularly bad at marching.
Right. They're no better or worse than anybody else in that situation. No, they get to Baltimore a little later, and then there's a short delay when they are rearmed. Up to that point, they'd been armed with converted flintlocks, so percussion-converted flintlocks. They're reissued with Enfield rifle muskets, and then the next morning, the 26th, they march out of Baltimore. So it puts them about a day behind the rest of Lockwood's brigade.
And so they get here July 2nd.
Yes.
And let's get them into the battle.
Yeah, okay.
Right? Where do they go? What do they do?
So first off, when Lockwood's regiments are assigned to the 12th Corps, and this does bring about a bit of a command issue within the 12th Corps that some listeners may be familiar with. The situation in the 12th Corps Command's a little weird at the beginning of July. Briefly, the normal commander of the Corps, Henry Slocum, Major General Henry Slocum, had been temporarily commanding a combined force of his own 12th Corps and the 5th Army Corps, so a wing of the Army. And although that had been discontinued by the time we're fighting the Battle of Gettysburg, Slocum seems to still have it in his mind that he's a wing commander. So he delegates command of the 12th Corps to his 1st Division commander, Brigadier General Alpheus Williams. He's going to be the acting Corps commander and is throughout the battle. Now, when Williams becomes the new Corps commander, the acting Corps commander, of course, Williams' own division is going to get taken over by his senior subordinate, and that's Brigadier General Thomas Ruger. So Ruger will be leading Williams' division at Gettysburg. And here's the problem. When Lockwood's brigade shows up, and Ruger's 1st Division is the weaker of the two at that point. So the intention was to assign Lockwood's brigade to Ruger's division. The problem is that Lockwood, by date of rank, was senior to Thomas Ruger. Now, Thomas Ruger had real-world battle experience, something that Lockwood didn't have. But you know how this works. If you and I are major generals and you got there first, then you are the senior. It doesn't matter if we have the same number of stars on our shoulder. And so what this meant for Alpheus Williams, a savvy, experienced commander, was, I'm going to have to turn my 1st Division over to this unknown newcomer.
Right.
Now, none of us know Lockwood. We don't know, is he amazingly competent or thoroughly incompetent or somewhere in between? I know what I've got in Tom Ruger, but I don't know what I have in Henry Lockwood. So Williams goes with a little bit of kind of sleight of hand. He assigns Lockwood as an independent brigade within the 12th Corps.
Smart.
Yeah, it's window dressing, but but it does mean that the division's going to be led by the experienced Ruger and not the inexperienced Lockwood. And although we don't have a lot to work with as far as like correspondence or anything from Lockwood, I mean, he files a battle report and stuff. He does do that. But he doesn't seem to have objected to any of this, even though, I mean, he would have been within his rights in Army protocol to have said, hey, I'm the senior brigadier general here. He doesn't. I think he's probably smart enough. He's certainly got the brains to know that he is the newcomer. He is the outsider. He's the untested one. And maybe the best course would just be go with it and let the more experienced guys,
I'm sure that's probably what he expected too. I mean, his assignment to the 12th Corps is more out of geolocation and it's arbitrary in some sense.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
The main reason for his assignment to the 12th Corps was it was the smallest corps numerically without him. So if anybody needs reinforcement, it's those guys.
Yeah, and that's another 1,800 men too. That's pretty good.
That's a pretty substantial reinforcement.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was probably relieved too.
I think I would be.
Yeah, I would too.
I'm not really up to leading a division of total strangers who are all looking at me and wondering if I'm going to lose it under fire.
Hardened veterans.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm the new guy who doesn't really have a lot of experience. Yeah. I think I'd be happy to go. Yes. Independent command. Thank you so much.
And
I'll answer to you.
What seems to reinforce the idea too that Lockwood was pretty, even tempered about this is that on July 3rd, skipping ahead a little bit here, but on July 3rd, his regiments will be assigned to occasionally relieve George Greene's brigade in the breastworks during the Confederate attacks of the morning. And Lockwood even mentions that in his battle report that although I am senior to Brigadier General Greene, he was the man on the ground. He knew the situation, so I deferred to him. So Lockwood doesn't seem to be one of these officers who gets, his panties in a twist about this kind of
The other
thing.
thing it caused, I was just thinking, this is but it's a large brigade. It's about 2,100 men.
About 1,800, including the.
I'm terrible with numbers. So we
18,
said
Mikey.
14, and then I just thought.
Well,
14.
that's not including the Eastern Shore boys.
True.
So,
Right.
and the Eastern
Plus-
Shore
So
has
it's like another
600.
400
Yeah.
So
something.
like
Yeah.
2,000-ish. But that would
Ish.
be under command of one of those three. 3 other regimental commanders that certainly have no brigade experience, and handing
right.
over 2,000 men to someone even less experienced than Lockwood
Yeah.
would not have
Yeah.
flown. And especially in Meade's army where Meade can just dictate what he wants almost.
Yes.
It's very different army than it was just a month prior to, when it comes to being able to do things like that.
Yeah. It sounds like he's a team player too. I mean,
Yeah.
he's putting that whole rank thing aside and he's just helping where he can. That's, coming up to the Battle of Gettysburg is not the time to pull that bullshit.
No, it
You
isn't.
know what I mean? Pardon my French, Colonel, but it's not the time to pull stuff like that, right? You've got an emergency situation on your hands.
Exactly.
You should, if you're smart, you go along to get along and you help the army win.
Yeah, it's supposed to be what it's about.
Yeah.
Supposed
to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So July 2nd. So we got on Culp's Hill. We've got Green up there, and then the rest of the 12th Corps goes away. So he's with them.
Yeah. Now, when they catch up to the 12th Corps and Williams, assigns them a place in the line, really from mid-morning till roughly 6 in the evening on the 2nd, they're forming the right flank of the 12th Corps position. If you want to put that on the modern battlefield, then as you are turning off of Baltimore Pike onto Cold Grove Avenue, it's eventually going to take you out to Spangler Spring, right? Well, pretty much the first few hundred yards of that trip along Cold Grove Avenue, you're driving along their position.
Okay.
It would be just to your right as you're driving on that road is the ground they would have occupied. And again, there's two unit, and they dig fortifications. Seems to be a little more digging in than building up, even though along most of the 12th Corps line, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's,
Okay.
you can't dig much on Culp's Hill. It's, the only thing that grows there is granite. So, when we look at photographs of existing breastworks or sketches, they're mostly building up with logs and rocks and stuff. But Lockwood specifically mentions, digging in, building earth and rail fortifications on his sector. So that's what they spend the morning doing. And then in the afternoon is pretty quiet. There's not a whole lot going on in that corner of the battlefield for the afternoon and early evening of the 2nd. But yeah, roughly about 6 p.m. is when Alpheus Williams gets the order to send reinforcements to the left flank, because, of course, at that point, that's where the big battle's been happening. Sickles' salient has collapsed at that point. You've already used up all the 2nd Corps and 5th Corps troops that you've thrown into that fray, and yet more men are needed to halt the Confederate advance. So the 12th Corps gets orders to send troops there. And initially, we won't get into all of that, but initially it's the 1st Division plus Lockwood's, quote, independent brigade, unquote, that gets sent. And they march with Williams, accompanies them. They march over to the southern end of Cemetery Ridge, roughly the area where the Father Corby Monument is today, that neighborhood. And at the moment that they arrive, and I've always thought this must have been an interesting moment to have been a fly on the wall, really. Here's 2 regiments entering their first real battle. And the Potomac Home Brigade boys had seen a few skirmishes here and there, like on the company level and stuff, but they'd never been in a big battle, and certainly the New Yorkers hadn't. And they're seeing all these broken, shot-to-pieces regiments of real veterans, guys who'd been at Antietam, guys who'd been at Fredericksburg, and they're all shot up and they're falling back, and they've had enough. And I've often wondered, what is in the mind of these rookies? Wow, if the likes of the Irish Brigade or Schweitzer's Brigade couldn't hold back these rebels, what the hell are we doing here?
Right.
But they'd been in the Army long enough, and they'd absorbed enough training and were well enough led that, the men formed ranks and they put their heads down and they advanced when they were ordered to advance. And their mission was to drive back the Confederates in their front, which would be in the neighborhood of the Trossel farm. And to their good fortune, by the time that they're arriving on that end of Cemetery Ridge and making this advance, won't really call it an assault, an advance. The Confederates in that sector have also become entirely fought out.
Yeah.
They've been through the ringer all afternoon and evening, and this is the point where, okay, clearly Longstreet's attack has crested, and the Confederates are beginning to pull back now. They're more far-flung units. Their more vulnerable units are pulling back, like Barksdale's brigade and such.
And is that who they're meeting when they're at the Trophy Farm? Is that what, the 21st Mississippi?
21st Mississippi, and probably some of Barksdale's other fragments a little bit north of that, maybe,
Okay.
but probably the 21st Mississippi. And when they advance, the Confederates give way immediately. I think it's probably the Lockwood's people are just advancing into the vacuum created by the Confederate withdrawal at that point. So they don't meet tons of resistance. The regiment's formed in two lines: Marylanders in front, New Yorkers in a second line. And this is worth mentioning too, because you will find accounts, secondary source accounts, where they're described as advancing in a column of fours against the enemy, suggesting that, which, by the way, is not a good policy. Okay?
Right.
That's just generally not good policy. Advancing with a marching formation, but against an enemy. The source on that is interesting. Alpheus Williams' memoir, From the Cannon's Mouth, which is a terrific memoir, but he describes this as such. He said, the 1st Maryland Home Regiment was ahead, and I ordered him, the commander of the regiment, to pitch into the woods. So he did, indeed, without waiting to form a line of battle, but rushing forward in column. The problem is that in Williams' official report, just shortly after the battle, he says, I ordered General Lockwood, whose brigade was in advance, to deploy his line and occupy the woods in front. And when you look at the participants in this advance, Lockwood says the 1st Potomac Home Brigade formed the first line and the 150th New York the second line.
Right.
The commander of the Marylanders, Colonel Malsby, said, on our arrival on the field of battle, we were instantly deployed in line. Captain Cogswell of the New Yorkers says, we formed in line battalion front. So, I don't know where Williams got that advancing in column thing for inclusion into his memoir, but
It might have. Wonder if that's just what he saw. I mean, it's very simple. A regiment going from a line into a battle line is the easiest of maneuvers.
Yeah, it is.
So it probably happened out of his line of sight, and he's just like, look at those crazy guys just going right in. But if they didn't meet any resistance, it's probably the quickest way to get from A to B.
It is.
Until they realized the Confederates were going to not give way.
I am extremely dubious that they ever advanced in column into the face of the enemy. I think.
Speaking of tactical brain, and sorry to backtrack a bit, but if they were on the far right of the 12th Corps, are they leading the column going south?
Yes.
That's an interesting decision.
And that is why they are the ones who are advancing.
That's
the
what I
enemy.
was thinking. I'm like, how are they going in first?
Yeah,
Right.
the two other brigades from the brigades from Ruger's division, they're still hanging back on Cemetery Ridge, and it's just Lockwood's people that advance because they are in the vanguard.
That crazier thought. Is this the column that gets lost on the way?
No, it is not.
No.
Okay.
About an hour later, the other 12th Corps division, John Geary's division, gets orders
Geary got.
to also go support the left flank. But Geary's essentially told, go follow Williams. But Williams left an hour ago, and there's no map and there's no guide.
Right.
And so, Geary does the best he can and ends up making a wrong turn and kind of
Stop at
marching out of the
Sheets.
battle.
Goes down to the
Yeah.
outlets and
A couple big gulps.
Gets some shopping
he
back.
gets partway to the outlets, when he realizes this can't possibly be correct. I'm
Right.
supposed to be marching toward a battle, and all I hear is crickets.
Right, the battle's over there.
Right,
and
right.
I'm going that way to nothing.
But look at these Under Armour prices.
Yes, yeah. Hey, Wilson Leather really closed? Damn. Yeah.
So when Lockwood's brigade gets into that area, the Trosel area, they're to the left of Willard, right? Willard from the 2nd Corps is there already,
Yes.
right? Okay. And is there something with Bigelow's battery?
Yes. When these two regiments advance in, I'm confident, line of battle, the Marylanders push right through the Trosel farm. Again, if they're meeting any resistance, it's the occasional scattered shot from a particularly stubborn Confederate, maybe. But they retake they overrun Bigelow's 3 abandoned guns there.
Okay.
And then the New Yorkers, who are following in line behind them, the New Yorkers get a detail of men and they begin rolling the guns back to Cemetery Ridge. So the 150th secures those previously overrun guns and bring them back to Union lines.
Okay.
There's 2 accounts of this advance at the Trossel farm that evening. That one is from one of the New York boys, and one is from one of the Potomac Home Brigade soldiers. And I think it's interesting to look at how this little advance, which, again, it's essentially a no-cost advance, very little resistance. The big fight has tapered off a little while earlier, but this was a big moment for these rookies, right? Mm-hmm. You're moving forward against the battle-tested veterans of the Army in Northern Virginia, and these men left radically different accounts of what that experience was. I'll start with a man in the front line and in the Potomac Home Brigade. And he said, with a shout that rang out loud and long, the brigade ran swiftly down the declivity and sweeping obliquely to the left across the plain amid a most terrific fire of artillery and musketry, halted not a moment until it reached the vicinity of Sherfy's peach orchard, where the severest contest of the day had occurred. Before this impetuous charge, the enemy fell back, leaving his dead and wounded within our lines. Reaching the line originally held by the 3rd Corps, the men of the 1st Potomac Home Brigade raised a shout of triumph, which rang through the valley and over the hills, and it was with the utmost difficulty they could be restrained from following the enemy further. But prudence forbade it, and the regiment was ordered to halt and remove from the field the wounded who had fallen in the fierce conflict of the afternoon. So that's one version. The other version is from Captain Cogswell of the 150th New York, and he said, we reached an open space at the north end of Little Round Top and, forming in line, battalion front, advanced across the fields to a point about half a mile west of where the line had originally been formed. The position to which the regiment advanced that night is now indicated by a granite marker near the Trossel house. The enemy had fallen back upon our first approach of reinforcements and were now concealed from view. We neither saw them again nor discharged a musket. 3 pieces of a Rhode Island battery, he meant Massachusetts, were drawn off the field. So, according to Captain Cogswell, there wasn't really much to this at all. And of course, according to the Marylander, this was like the biggest moment in the American Civil War. Of course. And I think, honestly, I think Cogswell of the 150th is probably a little more accurate as to what that moment involved.
So you mentioned something before about when they were on their way over from their original position over to what would be the Trossel farm area. Mm-hmm. And when they're on Granite Schoolhouse Lane, you mentioned how they're seeing the broken units of
Jetsam and Flotsam of, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there was a passage that struck me in the Brigades at Gettysburg. Brigades of Gettysburg. I always get that wrong. And it says, they soon passed a stream of wounded men. The first wounded soldier they encountered had blood on his hand and arm. Quote, we looked from one to another with serious faces which expressed what we all felt, but no one put into words. Jesting ceased. A strange silence fell upon the marching column. Strange that a little wound in a man's arm should affect us so. That was Charles Benton of the 150th
Yeah,
New
I was going
York.
to say that has to be Charles Benton, who was a teenage musician at the time.
Okay.
And right around the turn of the century, he wrote a memoir of his war service. Useful memoir, I would add, in terms of 150th New York accounts. Yeah, this theme comes back in Benton's writing because the next day, they're behind the breastworks at Culp's Hill, and they're shooting down Confederates by the bushel. And he remarks, wow, just yesterday, we were all freaking out at the sight of one wounded man. And now we're just nonchalant about guys getting cut to pieces.
Funny how that happens.
Yeah.
So quickly.
Almost instant, I can't even speak the word.
Acclamation?
Yeah, I guess that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. It very quickly takes the rookies and makes them almost immune to the horrors of battle in no time at all.
I think that's I'm glad you read that. I mean, that's a really telling kind of account. I mean, these are guys that have fashioned themselves as soldiers for months.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? they did soldiering as they were told to do. To their mind's eyes, they were just as much as soldiers. Now, they hadn't seen the elephant.
Right.
That didn't matter. They'd been in service for, 7 months at this point?
About 9.
Or more than that? Okay.
9, yeah.
So since the
Almost a year.
almost a year.
Yeah.
And then the first time they see what that really is that same experience all those other
Sobering.
soldiers have. And the fact that by the next day, they are, it's like that switch, which is, what those guys had to compartmentalize, what they had to push aside to do what they're there to do.
Yeah.
Because there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
No. Although 2 men do desert from the 150th over the course of July 2nd, 3rd. So 2 guys didn't adjust, I guess.
It's a small number.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
very
not
small
bad,
number in
yeah.
a regiment of 600 men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
600 men who've never, as you say, seen the elephant, believe me, I would have been the third guy if I were in that regiment.
Yeah.
I would have turned around when I saw the bloody arm. It's like, forget it. I'm done with
if
this.
not after the first day with the big knapsack, yeah.
Right.
Well, the 150th seems to be, like so many of these summer 1862 raised regiments, it seems to be made of pretty good stuff. Not to get too ahead of things, but they will be the one regiment of Lockwood's brigade that remains with the Army of the Potomac. When the brigade is essentially disbanded at the end of the Gettysburg campaign, and the Maryland units go back to the internal security duties that they were doing beforehand, the 150th is permanently incorporated into the 12th Corps. So they will go west with the 12th Corps. They'll be at Wauhatchie. They'll be at the Chattanooga campaign. And, of course, then from there on, the Atlanta campaign, the Carolinas, right through the end, they're serving in Sherman's Army Group in the last year of the war.
Is there a particular reason why they were kept? Did they request to stay, or were they ordered to stay?
I mean, I wouldn't have requested to stay. I would have wanted to go back to the barracks on Utah
I was
Street.
just going to say that they must have thought that was a raw deal.
I mean,
Yeah,
we got our battle in. We're good to go now. Back
Right.
to Baltimore. It would be a nice thing.
Yeah. You're from New York.
I think the main reason is the Maryland units were raised with the purpose of internal security duties, and that's still a valid mission after the Gettysburg campaign for sure. While the New Yorkers are a much more, for lack of a better term, a much more normal regiment of infantry, and not raised with any specific mission other than go fight the enemy wherever you find them. And so I think if you were going to incorporate one of those regiments, it's probably the only one you could have really incorporated.
Sure. Yeah.
Probably didn't.
Makes sense.
All the men raised in Pennsylvania for the emergency probably didn't do them any favors either. We don't need you helping back home. We've got
Right.
thousands of guys that
Yeah.
don't know what they're doing. You're in the Army now.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
You've shown you can fight. We got to go south,
Yep.
and you're coming with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have a very fine record in the last year and a half of the war. So they're good material. Clearly, yeah.
All right. So the Trossel Farm, they recover some guns of Bigelow's battery, and then what?
So then again, since there's really no threat to the left flank any longer, they get a couple hours of rest. Apparently, sometime after dark. One report says 9 p.m. As always, take times of day with like an entire bag of salt. But sometime after dark for sure. They are then marched back toward Culp's Hill. Not to Culp's Hill, because of course part of the hill is now in Confederate hands.
Right.
And yet they're formed along the Baltimore Pike in the area of the Spangler farm over there, where they're supporting some of the Union artillery batteries that are moving into position along there. Of course, by the morning of the 3rd, the plan, General Williams, acting 12th Corps commander, his plan is to retake the part of the Culp's Hill that had fallen to the Confederates the previous evening, the lower summit of the hill. And part of that plan for a federal counterattack involved a pretty big artillery bombardment. So you're moving a lot of Union artillery into Powers Hill and along the Baltimore Turnpike. And for a time, Lockwood's people were simply supporting the artillery there. But a couple things happened on the morning of the 3rd. First off, the wayward 1st Eastern Shore Regiment finally catches up. They made a pretty cracking pace, I think, altogether. And when they first caught up with the Army of the Potomac, they'd come up the Taneytown Road.
Okay.
Okay, so they'd taken a slightly different route to get to the Army. And one of the first things that they do, they're marching behind Little Round Top, and they talk about solid shot crashing through the trees occasionally, being a little disconcerting. And then they march past a divisional hospital. They don't say which division. I'm assuming probably 5th Corps. But they march by a massive hospital, and of course there's all the horrors associated with that. So these guys, before they've experienced any battle, are getting a real close-up look at what happens in battle. And again, by dawn on the 3rd, they're now serving with Lockwood's brigade. Also, they're along the Baltimore Pike. Before dawn, 2 companies of the 150th New York were sent across the pike toward Culp's Hill as a skirmish line, just a feel for the enemy. Where are the Confederates? How close are they to the pike? That's a real short little action. Doesn't seem to have involved a whole lot. And then a little later in the morning, I believe about 6 a.m., the Potomac Home Brigade is ordered to make an attack on the Confederate position in the neighborhood of what is called today Pardee Field, and the area a little bit toward Spangler's Spring from there. The purpose of this attack is it's not a well-known attack. I mean, people have heard of the 2nd Massachusetts and 27th Indiana and that kind of snafu that happens there. But the Potomac Home Brigade boys make an attack of their own.
Yeah.
Now, the purpose of this seems to be lost to history. So this is a supposition on my part, nothing more than a supposition. But Williams talks about, as part of his plan to retake Culp's Hill, Geary's division was going to do the heavy lifting. Geary being his left-hand division, he was going to do the retaking of the ground, and he was going to support that with feints, sort of small jabs, if you will, from Ruger's division and Lockwood's brigade. That, for example, is what brings on the 27th Indiana, 2nd Massachusetts thing. And apparently Lockwood received instructions to conduct a 1-regiment attack of his own. And it is difficult to know whether this was supposed to be, a feint that got aborted before it got too serious or not, or whether Lockwood maybe loses control of events for a moment or what. But this is a full hell for leather charge by the Marylanders. And if the accounts of the Marylanders can be believed, and I mean, I just read you a rather fantastical account by a Marylander, but these are this is Lockwood, and this is the regimental commander Malsby talking. They say it was looked to be a pretty successful attack that seemed to have the Confederates on their heels a little when they were ordered to halt the advance because of a Union unit, unidentified, that is moving in on the Confederate flank and was going to enter their field of fire, potentially. The way that, let me, if you don't mind, I'm just going to, I'll let the guys on the scene tell the story here. This is from a member of the 1st Potomac Home Brigade, and he said it seemed certain destruction, but such were orders, and Colonel Malsby gave the command, forward, double quick. With deafening cheers, what was deafening cheers? The line sprang forward and advanced as rapidly as the nature of the ground would allow. From behind every tree and rock, the enemy's fire was poured in, but the regiment, with courage undaunted, pushed forward toward the stone wall. This would be the one bisecting, the ground, the place, from which our adversary sent death-dealing missiles. The fire of his sharpshooters posted in trees was also very close and annoying. Already many had fallen, and the regiment seemed devoted to destruction, but onward it sped, officers leading and cheering the men. Gaining a position within 20 yards of the wall, and while preparing for a final charge, orders were given for the regiment to return to the turnpike, as the movement of another regiment on the enemy's flank would expose it to an enfilading fire from its friends. So, who is this unknown federal unit that seems to have been encroaching?
Like the 147th? Or
I think the most likely candidates are either, this is the moment the 2nd Massachusetts is advancing across Spangler's Meadow. Yep. Or it may be the 20th Connecticut moving into that same neighborhood. They move into the neighborhood of where the my apologies to nutmeggers worldwide, but they move into position near the restroom building out there.
Are they the ones taking artillery fire from friendly fire?
Yes, them and the 46th Pennsylvania both take so-called friendly fire and get really aggravated about it. Yeah, they send like death threats to the artillerymen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they do, which is maybe understandable under the circumstances.
Sure.
But yeah, I think it's maybe 20th Connecticut, maybe 2nd Massachusetts. They're the only candidates I can think of that would have been advancing from like a perpendicular angle to the axis of the Potomac Home Brigade advance, where, real friendly fire could be an issue there. But regardless of who it was, Malsby is ordered at the last minute, call off the attack and fall back. And it may simply be a matter, too, of maybe this thing went a little too far and a little too well, considering Williams' intention was a feint and not to send a single regiment into an assault into the teeth of the enemy.
Right.
But again, it seems to have gone pretty well. The men seem to have behaved very well in what is really their first real test. Because here the Confederates aren't pulling back. Here the Confederates aren't exhausted. They're fighting. And they seem to have done quite well. They also lose very heavily. The 1st Potomac Home Brigade, for the entirety of the battle, loses just over 100 casualties, which is significant. 80 of those fell during this quick morning advance, this feint. So they get cut up pretty significantly.
Yeah.
And they fall back to the Baltimore Turnpike. And for at least a couple hours anyway, they'll get a chance to lick their wounds and rest up. But throughout the course of the morning's fighting on the 3rd, all of Lockwood's regiments will be then rotated in and out of the breastworks. This is on General Geary's divisional front, so on the upper summit, mainly, of Culp's Hill. And, of course, during the Confederate attacks in the morning, and maybe just to provide a little bit of big-picture background on this, on the evening of the 2nd, the Confederates overrun essentially half of Culp's Hill, the lower summit, and Geary's division managed to hold the upper part of the hill. So the Confederates renew the attack at dawn. So both sides had been planning an attack at dawn. Williams to retake the ground and the Confederates to exploit what they'd taken the previous evening. And really the Confederates jump first, so their attacks start rolling. And in response to this, mainly it's just a defensive posture for Federal troops on the upper hill. And it's just stand in the breastworks and load and fire as rapidly as you possibly can. And a whole lot of regiments go through an amazing amount of ammunition that morning. I've looked at regiment after regiment where men talk about firing 150 rounds, 200 rounds, just in that morning. So obviously under those conditions, you are regularly going to have to pull troops out of the line, replenish ammunition, clean filthy weapons that won't load anymore, and just, give the men's shoulders a break, if nothing else. And when those rotations are taking place, Lockwood's brigade gets called in regiment by regiment, not as a whole brigade, but to spell some of Geary's men.
So is Lockwood's brigade as a whole kind of viewed as like the Corps Reserve or the Division Reserve or A Division's Reserve? Like what? How are they being utilized by the overall
I guess you would say that Williams is using them as kind of a reserve, plugging them in where necessary. Although other units will also be doing that. Shaler's brigade from the 6th Corps comes over there in the morning, and they're doing the same thing. They're just rotating regiment by regiment, and the units of Geary's own division are doing that. Like the 29th Ohio will go in to take the place of the 149th New York for a while, and then they'll switch back. Again, keep in mind, it's a tremendous volume of fire these guys are putting out. Ridiculously high.
Think about how unassailable that position is by July 3rd. I mean, the ground itself, if you're on East Confederate Avenue and you're looking up at that hill in the winter or the fall, you're like,
daunting.
Jesus. Yeah. And to think, I'm going to use the word luxury, but to have a luxury of that many men that you can just rotate regiments to keep up a pace of fire, there's no way they're getting up that hill.
No.
Oh, I think luxury is exactly the right word. There's not many times in the Civil War where you do have that luxury of, hey, that regiment's tired. That regiment has filthy rifles. Let's send somebody fresh in. And yet that's what's being done all morning long. And Confederate attacks that probably would have been futile anyway are absolutely futile under those conditions. Every time they advance, they get hit by a wall of lead. And so at different times in the morning, first it's the 150th New York, I believe, that is the first to spell some of Geary's boys in the works. And they do that at least a couple times over the course of the morning. They fight for an hour or so, and then they'll withdraw, and somebody else will go in, and then they'll go back in later. The 1st Maryland Potomac Home Brigade boys seem to be the last unit committed to the fight, which makes sense considering their really awful morning earlier.
Right.
And the only really notable thing to say about Lockwood's troops in the works on the 3rd, I mean, they all do their duty. And it seems like the 150th New York does its duty pretty well. Not necessarily with lots of skill. They are rookies. But certainly with plenty of grit. I think that can absolutely be said about the 1st Potomac Home Brigade men. The 1st Eastern Shore, kind of the problem child of the brigade, of course, things get a little weird with them. Of course.
Of course.
Yeah. So they enter the fight at a moment where their role is to relieve a Pennsylvania regiment, one of Geary's regiments that's already in the breastworks, and apparently is getting pretty well fought out. So it's time to pull the Pennsylvanians out. And when they arrived on the scene, the Eastern Shore boys thought it was a pretty dramatic moment. I'll let one of their very few primary sources tell that story better, though. He was there and I was not. This is Lieutenant John Shane of the Eastern Shore Regiment. And he said, "We rushed toward the front, shouting like mad, pausing on a slight eminence to deliver a volley." And those who've been to Culp's Hill will note, if you are on the upper summit, the breastworks are lower than the crest. They're on the military crest, as they should be. But advancing into or out of the breastworks meant crossing higher ground to their rear. And that was the vulnerable moment. That's when a lot of casualties occur. Not in the breastworks, but coming and going from the shuttling out of in and out of the breastworks. So we rushed forward toward the front, shouting like mad, pausing on a slight eminence to deliver a volley. Without orders, we rushed into a parapet. In this earthwork or parapet lay a thin line of the 111th Pennsylvania. Our first volley passed clear over their heads. The next instant, they rushed to the rear while our men crowded into the works. We so completely filled the space that all the officers were left a few feet in the rear, altogether without cover. We were close enough to the enemy's lines to see the eyes of our opponents. At this moment, a double line of infantry charged toward us, yelling like demons. Before our fierce and steady fire, these lines were broken and driven back. Had our appearance been delayed 15 minutes, the weak line we relieved, exhausted, could not have withstood the charge, and the results of the fight at that point would doubtless have been quite different. Not sure whether the men from Erie, Pennsylvania would have agreed with that assessment.
Sure, yeah.
Some of them were apparently a little bit concerned about this volley the Marylanders fire from behind them. In the words of the Eastern Shore Regimental Commander, James Wallace, in his battle report, he states, "Upon reaching the brow of the hill, we halted for an instant upon the discovery of the enemy attempting to rush upon our works, and we then delivered a very effective volley over the heads of the men occupying the position we were ordered to relieve. The officer in command of the men in the breastworks, supposing we were firing into his command, requested that the fire should cease." Yeah, I'm sure request is the right word there. That volley, however, with the fire from the regiment in the works, effectually checked all further advance of the enemy. So they enter the fight basically scaring the crap out of the 111th Pennsylvania, and then moving into the works and finding, wow, we're a much bigger regiment than the couple hundred men the 111th had, so they can't they can't shoehorn everybody into the breastworks.
Am I remembering this right, the 111th position is down in a swale, or is that just where their monument?
It's toward a swale, and determining exactly where a lot of these regiments are in the works in that morning fight, it is problematic.
Okay.
For one thing, I mean, it's a lot of units in a pretty small area. I mean, if you use the boundary area of like the saddle between the two summits and the traverse line that had been built by Geary's division the day before. And then you go all the way up to, say, the 60th New York Monument just below the crest. This is not a big area. And we're talking about 3 brigades worth of Geary's troops, Lockwood's regiments, and then a little later, regiments from Shaler's brigades. We're talking about a huge amount of people in a pretty tight area.
Yeah,
and coming
when you put
and
it that
going
way.
regularly.
Yeah. You're right. It is, when you think of all those men in there, it is a tight area.
Mm-hmm.
When
And
you
it's
drive
always
through it
in
now,
flux. It's always in flux
Right.
because somebody's being relieved.
Yeah.
So, again, is the 111th and their brigade, Thomas Kane's brigade, led for part of the battle by Cobham, they are down in the area of the saddle and the traverse for a time, and they may well have been in that neighborhood when the Eastern Shore people relieve them, but that's not crystal clear.
Okay. That's interesting.
That's another great account, though, because, logic tells you for them to get in the trench, the 111th has to leave.
Yes.
111th sees their relief coming. Their thought is, we have
Go.
to get out of the trench.
Right.
Yes.
Suddenly, they stop,
shoot.
and they're leveling their rifles.
Yeah.
And it's very, what is this? Your first, who the hell are these guys?
Right.
And they don't know it's their first, they don't know who's coming up. Well,
Right.
they probably could have guessed by the size, but still, you don't expect them to, we got to leave first.
Right.
jackasses.
Let us get out first. Yeah.
No, you have no idea who these guys are. And they're not wearing 12th Corps badges. They're not anybody you've ever seen before. So,
Yep. And it's very, the Maryland, it's their first fight. They see the enemy. To them, that is, gotta go.
Gotta kill them all now.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's a good point. Yeah. Like maybe it's just the jitters of you're seeing the enemy and they're right there.
Right there.
Like you said, from the wall you could see their eyes. That's close.
And a jittery company is one thing. A jittery 600-something man regiment is
Yeah.
something that probably scared the crap out of the Pennsylvania.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead. Continue.
Oh, well, so there's a moment where the Eastern Shore Regiment has there's sort of a negative moment in this story, and it really has to do with running low on ammunition, apparently, which, again, is happening a lot on Culp's Hill because of the volume of fire that everybody's putting out. But apparently, companies that began to run out of ammunition, these men slowly began to drift out of the breastworks. Again, it's an inexperienced unit. I don't think the Eastern Shore Regiment is necessarily the most highly disciplined unit we're talking about here necessarily. No aspersions on the men, but if you look at their first 2 years of the war and the number of times men of the regiment say, hell no, I won't go,
Right.
then, yeah, there's a problem there. Some men begin drifting toward the rear, and then it becomes chunks of companies drifting to the rear. And this is noticed by some neighboring commands, although it's kind of interesting that in the whether it's in the battle reports or whether it's in post-war writing, it tends to just get mentioned by neighboring units and then just sort of in passing or glossed over entirely. It's almost like we don't want to tarnish our victory with this moment of unsteadiness that this one regiment of newcomers exhibited. But they do get noticed that, this is a regiment that's not necessarily performing as well. It's interesting that, George Green, Mr. Culp's Hill, legitimately, in his report of the battle, and it's an extensive report, it's a very useful report because it is extensive, but the troops who are sent to assist Green both on the night of July 2nd, and he received several reinforcement regiments from 1st Corps and 11th Corps that night, and the troops who were sent to his assistance on the morning of the 3rd, he mentions all of those units and their commanders by name and compliments all of them on, good, steady fighting. He talks about how the 1st Potomac Home Brigade and the 150th New York, new troops performed well, and then he just mentions the Eastern Shore Regiment. Oh, yeah, they were there too. No, they performed admirably or showed a lot of grit or any of that stuff.
Right.
They were there too. And I think it's, I view it as kind of criticism by omission.
Yeah.
A little bit there, I don't have anything nice to say, so I'm just not going to say much of anything.
Yeah.
It's
So,
kind
it
of the
sounds
sense
like
I
they
get.
were a pain in the ass, and that's
Probably.
the best he could say. is-
Probably a bit of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But, they did basically what they were asked to do. They just didn't do it all that skillfully.
You know how we're talking about Lockwood being smart and, going along to get along, and let's just be a team player and win the battle and do what I can to help that happen. They're the opposite, it sounds like. They're the ones who are like kicking and screaming the whole way. I mean, I may be exaggerating a bit, and it might be a little unfair, but it just sounds to me like their attitude, they might have had an attitude, might have had a bad attitude.
Well, I mean, certainly Company K did.
Yeah. Well, they didn't go.
No,
right?
most of them didn't
Most
go.
of them didn't go.
A little rump of the company does go to Gettysburg voluntarily. It's hard to say because all we have to go on about what material this regiment is made of under fire, all we have to go on is one morning at the Battle of Gettysburg. These guys will never fight in another significant battle over the course of the entire war.
Oh, interesting.
They're going to go back to the whole internal security thing. And they're not going to fight in the Overland Campaign, and they're not going to be at Petersburg or any of this stuff. So Gettysburg, morning of July 3rd, is their defining moment of the war. And yet we only have a couple of accounts. We have the man I've quoted, Lieutenant John Shane. We have the report of the regimental commander, Colonel Wallace. And that's just about it, other than tangential mention in like Green's report or whatever, or the 111th Pennsylvania guys talking about, wow, these Marylanders almost blew us away. That's all we have to work with. So it's really hard to know, are these guys just a little discombobulated in their first battle and maybe not being led terribly well? Or are they, second-class material that just does not want to be there?
I was going to say,
I'd like to say the first over
you'd
the...
wanna-
I do too.
Yeah.
You'd want to look and, like I was going to say, well, imagine all these other veteran regiments. What was their first engagement like? But to be even more than that, this Maryland Eastern Shore Regiment had it harder than they did, because when the war began, those regiments were all in the same equal playing field.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
Eastern Shore Regiment is coming into a very experienced army.
Yeah.
And they probably have we got to do something. We're going to show them we can
Right.
stick in. And,
Yeah.
and there's just the inexperience.
So yeah, they're
It's
like
giving the kid the big stick.
I was
going
gonna
to
say
letting
it's,
them swing
it's
it
the
around.
over-eager little brother trying to prove.
Tommy,
It may well be.
Yeah.
can't hit your brother in the head with that.
Yeah. So are you saying like maybe they were a little spastic?
No, I think it's a mix of inexperience, and they didn't expect to be there a couple weeks before that.
No.
And I think that's difficult for anybody. Yeah, I'm standing up for him.
Yeah. No, I think we should stand up for them because we weren't there, and I couldn't do any of that.
Well, that's exactly the
So-
point. At the end of the day, the great majority of the men stood their ground,
Yeah.
did what they were told to do. Again, maybe didn't do it all that skillfully, but did what they were asked to do.
They were there.
Yeah.
And who cares if they had a bad attitude?
Well,
I would
it's-
too in those conditions.
At the end of the day, none of this costs the battle.
Right.
So,
Right.
other units crumble, veteran units crumble. These guys don't really crumble. They begin to fall apart a little bit with the lack of ammo and, beginning to kind of retreat in dribs and drabs. But that doesn't become a rout. So,
And they had a good enough attitude to march for a week to get there.
Yeah.
That's another thing. If I go for a walk, like you walk like 7 miles a day, right?
Yeah.
You walk a lot. If I were to go with you on one of your 7 mile walks, I'd be sore for 2 days.
Oh, I know I'm leaving you behind for the buzz.
No. I'll make it for the 7 hours. No, I will. I will.
Seen you.
I will force myself to do it. I will be huffing. I will be puffing. I will be limping, but I will make it. But I will not recover for 3 days. I wouldn't be able to walk for 3 days, right? And so these guys walked miles and miles and miles for days.
6 days.
in crappy shoes.
In crappy shoes, right? They don't have,
New Balance.
or Nike or anything like that. They don't have, sneakers. They got these shitty shoes, and they're walking for days. They don't have that experience behind them. I mean, yeah, I cut them slack.
They're learning, like you said earlier, they're learning to discard the stuff they don't need. They're learning
Yeah.
the stuff these
That
guys have
I already
known
know
for years.
Yeah, the stuff everybody else learned a year and a half ago.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so where did we leave off? Have we complete? Where did we leave off?
Well, we left off with essentially each of Lockwood's regiments doing multiple turns in the breastworks, relieving other units in Geary's division, and definitely participating in the repulse of the Confederate attacks. There's really no question about that they contributed significantly. And, a bullet being fired from an Eastern Shore man's every bit as effective as a bullet being fired from a 111th veteran.
Sure, of course.
They both do the same thing at the end of the day.
Yep.
So the three regiments, after they do all of their, tours of duty in the works, couple things. By the time the Confederate attacks have really failed and have just ended at Culp's Hill, which is probably sometime around 11, a little after 11 in the morning, the Confederates have just said, we can't get this done. We're not going to throw any more troops at this. As things quieted down on the hill, the Potomac Home Brigade Regiment, Colonel Malsby, he asked to take his regiment out of the works so that his men could get a meal and a little bit of rest. Now, these guys had not had any rations in about 24 hours, and they'd been through a vigorous, costly morning assault, and then they spelled Geary's boys in the trenches. And they're pretty eventful 24 hours for these rookies, relative rookies. And Malsby wanted to again pull his regiment out of the works and get a little rest. And General Lockwood approved that, but said, since General Greene's acting as the immediate sector commander, run it past him too. Just protocol, right? And then an unknown staff officer, purporting to be a staff officer of General Greene's, and who probably was, said essentially, don't sweat telling General Greene, I got it covered. You can pull your regiment out. We'll get the neighboring regiments to extend their lines and cover the hole you've left. It's all good. Yeah, well, it wasn't all good, apparently.
So that's what they said. Oh, no, we saw a guy. He said it's fine.
Yeah. He did.
His name was Steve.
Yeah, Steve.
Lieutenant Steve.
Lieutenant Steve, yeah. Smith, I think, yeah. And, anyway, Malsby, who, by the way, seems to have been a good, conscientious officer. I've never seen anything about William Malsby that suggests he was anything else. So I think he was acting in good faith. But he pulls the regiment out, they get some rest and, all that. A couple days later, Greene brings to Lockwood's attention, hey, what about that regiment of yours that, kind of pulled out of my line without telling me? And Lockwood sees Malsby about this, and Malsby explains the situation. This staff officer from Greene said it was cool, so we left. And Lockwood said, okay, well, just why don't you go see Greene, explain it all to him, it'll all be good. Which apparently it was. Apparently it was fine. But if you look at the official records, Federal Reports, Volume 1, you'll find not only Malsby's battle report, but a little add-on after that, sort of reviewing all the stuff I just mentioned, and maybe making it clear in ink that we weren't pulling out a line without authorization here. We thought we had authorization. And Malsby says, I could never find that staff officer ever again. So,
of course.
Who knows?
Is that staff officer in the room with us now, Colonel?
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So, so there's a little bit of a kerfuffle about that. But, again, it's much ado about nothing.
Yeah.
Doesn't really stick to Malsby or his regiment. There's no shame involved there or anything like that. Just, miscommunication on the battlefield. It occasionally happens. And other than that, they spend a pretty quiet afternoon of July 3rd. But then when the big cannonade begins prior to the Pickett, Pettigrew, Trimble, Wilcox charge, I do try to be inclusive.
Very political.
That's right, yeah.
Well, again, Wilcox never gets any attention in that.
That's true.
And his people die just as heroically as all the rest of them.
Absolutely.
Anyway, and with the beginning of that attack, orders come for the 12th Corps to send a couple of brigades over to bolster the Union center. And Lockwood and one of Ruger's brigades, too, are then marched over toward essentially about the point where Cemetery Ridge and Cemetery Hill come together. And they talk about being held on Cemetery Hill in reserve to be moved forward if needed. So if there'd been a Confederate breakthrough there were a lot of Federal troops that were sort of coalescing
hanging
around
out
that,
there, yeah.
that neighborhood, and Lockwood's men were some of those.
You're talking like the Leicester House area, or
That neighborhood, yeah, I think.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
right.
think that neighborhood. Maybe a little closer to where the old visitor center used to be, but that neighborhood,
Okay, yeah,
neighborhood
okay.
certainly. But again, happily for them, they're not needed. There is no Confederate breakthrough. The troops in place managed to defeat the attack, and shortly after they marched back to Culp's Hill. July 4th for them is spent collecting discarded weapons, burying the dead, probably just trying to figure out, wow, what just happened in the last 2 days to us?
Yeah.
And when the army departs Gettysburg in pursuit of Lee's army, Lockwood's people go with them. And they'll take part in the pursuit. And at the point where Lee's army, though, crosses the Potomac on the 14th of July, that's pretty much the end of the Lockwood's Brigade's story. Because when Meade's army crosses the Potomac in pursuit shortly after that, Lockwood's Brigade's going out of existence. Lockwood's been ordered to take the Maryland regiments, take them back to their earlier duties. 150th New York, here now permanently 12th Corps. Lockwood's Brigade then passes into oblivion.
So Lockwood goes back to?
So he goes back to the Middle Department, various duties within the Middle Department, although his war briefly gets exciting one last time.
Okay.
In the late spring, beginning of June of 64, a division commander vacancy occurs in the 5th Corps, at that time commanded by Gouverneur K. Warren. And Lockwood is summoned to fill it. I don't know why Lockwood was summoned to fill it necessarily. I mean, of all the available brigadier generals, why him? I don't know. But he gets the job. He's ordered to report to General Warren at 5th Corps headquarters. He's given command of a division. So this is something he's never done before.
Right.
Commanded a brigade in one fight. Did okay, did fine. A division in open country warfare is a whole other animal. And he incurs the wrath of Warren, which was mighty easy to do in the Overland campaign. Really, Warren seems like he was pretty tightly wound for a lot of that. So he takes a lot of that out on Lockwood. And I think it's within 48 hours of his taking command of his division, he's fired and told, go back to Baltimore. We don't need you here. I don't know that he was necessarily fairly treated by Warren, but, whatever. So he goes back to Baltimore, and again, the last months of his Civil War are back in pretty quiet duty. After the war, he goes back to the Naval Academy.
Oh, really?
And really, for the rest of his life, that's what he's doing. He's teaching at the Naval Academy.
Wow.
Almost until his death.
So you're at the Naval Academy being taught by somebody who fought at Gettysburg. What an interesting...
Commanded an infantry brigade at Gettysburg, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, the 150th New York, when they stayed with the 12th Corps, who were they brigaded with?
So they remain... They're given to the 1st Division. Let me think here real quick, because the division goes through a couple of incarnations. I believe they are assigned to Ruger's 3rd Brigade, as I recall.
Okay.
Now, again, though, once we get to the beginning of 1864, the 12th Corps, along with the 11th, and several other regiments from that had been in the East Tennessee area, are all combined into a big, brand new 20th Corps.
Right.
And a lot of the brigade organizations changed at that
sure.
point. I'm honestly not remembering exactly where the 150th is at that point, except I'm certain they do remain in the 1st Division, but I can't give you their brigade in the Atlanta campaign or the Carolinas campaign.
More than I could have given, so...
The big question we all have is who got the really nice Baltimore quarters of the 150th New York?
Yeah, I don't know.
Who's moving in?
Yeah,
that's a great question.
It is a great question.
Yeah.
I do not know.
Who gets to be warm?
Possibly, at least during the Gettysburg campaign, I would assume it was filled by New York State militia troops, because a few New York State militia regiments are sent to Baltimore during the Gettysburg campaign.
Okay.
I think it's the 69th and the 7th, maybe. So they may have moved into the barracks on Utah Street for a short time, but they were only temporary duty
That would be interesting.
By the way,
to find
Atlanta, the
out.
150th is in Ruger's
Oh, still in Ruger's
Common Brigade.
Okay.
So 27th Indiana, 2nd Mass, 13th
Third
New
Wisconsin,
Jersey,
yeah.
3rd Wisconsin, and the 107th New York is in there as well.
There you go. So it is the same brigade that Ruger commanded at Gettysburg exactly, but with the 150th added there. Yeah. They're in good company in that brigade too.
What I love about doing these shows about Culp's Hill is that Culp's Hill, and everybody points this out all the time, it was the one piece of ground fought over for the most number of hours, but it gets the least attention.
Well, except for a low ridge just down the street here that gets fought over for every single daylight hour on the 2nd and 3rd of July.
Well, that's true.
If you listen to
See
it,
earlier episode.
if you had listened to Addressing Gettysburg before, you would know.
Oh God!
About
See,
Orland
as soon
B.
as
Smith.
as soon as I finish the episode, it's out of my head, and I'm worrying about the next one.
However,
Yes.
on a large scale, yes, Culp's Hill is absolutely the longest sustained large-scale infantry combat of the battle, by which I mean combat involving brigades and divisions as opposed to regiments and companies.
No, but what he was referring to is it was Smith's Brigade. We did an episode on, what was it, a year ago?
Several months anyway.
At least, yeah. And that's the thing that we forget is because it's a neighborhood now. It's a Culp Park neighborhood is where that all happened. And so there's nowhere for us. I mean, we could go there, but
I do. I regularly do tours there,
Do you?
even though it's asphalt. Yeah,
so this guy's front lawn is where
pretty much.
Nixon's grandfather fell.
The interest for being asphalt, and when I drive to McDonald's,
What'd
in
you
the
call
morning,
me?
For
Spelled slightly differently.
Yeah, the French spelling.
Asphalt.
If I
Okay.
go to McDonald's in the morning for a coffee, because I like McDonald's coffee, I don't know why.
I don't either.
I go through Culp Park, and even though there's houses there, those undulations are still very noticeable.
Fairview
Yeah.
and Highland Avenues run right along the crest, and especially if you are looking west, like towards Seminary Ridge, you're very clearly on a piece of high ground.
For all those houses, it's still very
Distinct.
very
Yeah.
noticeable.
And if you go, I think it's down Queen Street, and you get there to the crest of the ridge, and you stop and you look straight out, you're going to see the rec park down below, but right across or right behind that is Seminary Ridge.
Yeah.
So this is the Confederate line. So there, you can at least get an idea if you go to those spots, and you can see, and you can turn around and look behind you, and then you'll see buildings, but that's Cemetery Hill.
And it's high.
It is
If
high.
you go up to that first
Yeah.
stop sign, that four-way stop
Fairview
sign,
Avenue.
and you
Yep.
turn around and you look back towards the rec park, it's like, this is why they came out here.
Yeah.
It makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
Yeah. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll take a break. We'll come back, do questions from our patrons over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. And if you want to call in, the number is 717-420-1978. And again, if you have a question, you want to just do it in the chat. It's $10 or more super chats that will be noticed and read on the air. And that helps defray the cost of feeding this motley crew that we have here tonight. So you guys stick around. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes. Stay there.
While we pay the bills, we hope you'll call 717-420-1978 and get in the queue to ask a Gettysburg Guide. We'll be right back.
Oh, the ocean waves do roll, and the stormy winds do blow, and we poor sailors are skipping at the top, while the landlubbers lie down below, 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 while the landlubbers lie down below.
At Digital History Pioneers Foundation, we are about grassroots history on digital platforms. That means we are about podcasters, documentarians, YouTubers, and even TikTokers. All of these creators are out there trying to share their love of history with the public. They don't need ideas, they need funding, both from viewers and corporate donors. DH Pioneer's initial funding focus is on the Civil War era, with a special emphasis on the Addressing Gettysburg podcast. So be a vital part of the unique content Addressing Gettysburg has in store by donating at dhpioneers.com and help bring your love of history to the people. Digital History Pioneers is an IRS Section 501c3 approved charitable corporation that makes any donation tax deductible to the fullest extent of the law.
The Gettysburg Museum of History, located right here in the center of Gettysburg, PA. Owner and curator Eric Dorr grew up here and has spent his life collecting and preserving history through artifacts ranging from the Civil War, the Battle of Gettysburg, World War II, presidential items, pop culture, and more. His museum is free and open to visitors Wednesday through Sunday, 11 to 5 p.m., where you can stop by and immerse yourself in some of the most amazing artifacts that you would never believe exist in the middle of Gettysburg. If you're a fan of Band of Brothers and Everything Easy Company, you'll love his exhibit featuring the Dick Winters collection and artifacts from D-Day. You can even own your own piece of history by buying one of the many relics they have for sale in the museum and on the website gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com. The Gettysburg Museum of History is a non-profit 501c3 organization with a foundation that allows all purchases and donations to keep the museum operating and open free of charge. They have been featured on the History Channel, the Travel Channel, the Smithsonian Channel, and the Science Channel. Now you can check them out on American Artifact, the series on the YouTube channel, The History Underground. So that's the Gettysburg Museum of History at 219 Baltimore Street or the gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com.
If you like this podcast and what we're doing here, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you very much.
Charge take?
That's another great question.
Who can forget the sounds of the 60s?
The 1860s. I can't, and you can't either. Now, there's Marching Through Georgia, the exciting new album by Billy Webster. All of your favorite hits of the 1860s in one place. Such hits as Gary Owens, The Battle Hymn of the Republic, All Quiet Along the Potomac Tonight, Marching Through Georgia, and much, much more. So what are you waiting for? Go to billysongs.com and order your digital download of Billy Webster's Marching Through Georgia today. That's billysongs.com. Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center, Gettysburg's premier museum, is housed in the historic Lutheran Seminary building constructed in 1832, a witness to the first day of battle. The museum's 3 floors of exhibits connect visitors to the dilemmas that led to the Civil War, provide a powerful and personal view of the battle's first day, and explore one of the battlefield's largest hospitals. No visit to Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center is complete without a guided tour of the building's famous cupola, where on the eve of battle, officers and civilians saw thousands of Confederate soldiers' campfires burning to the west, and Brigadier General John Buford watched for vital federal reinforcements as fighting erupted on the morning of July 1st. Today, you can stand where Buford stood and discover how this view helped chart the course of the Battle of Gettysburg. Your trip to Gettysburg is not complete without a serious visit to Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center, Gettysburg's premier museum. Purchase tickets online at seminaryridgemuseum.org or call 717-339-1300. To get tickets or a cupola tour, listeners may call or walk in and mention addressing Gettysburg, or by ordering online using the promo code AG1863 for 20% off. Seminary Ridge Museum and Education Center. It began here.
There's a devil to pay.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
What?
We're back.
No, we're not. Okay. Okay, so as you know, ladies and gentlemen, spring has sprung. It is April, and we are coming on the third Saturday of April. You know what that means? It's the first Get Out of the Car tour. And this year, they're a little bit different. We're calling them field talks. Less tour, more talk. And like the tavern talk that we just put out yesterday on Valley Forge, it's the same kind of format where you, the tourist in this case, you're on par with the guide and we are discussing things. We're doing the wheat field, and if you go to our website, you'll see there's Mikey B's face right there. He's smiling. He's all happy. Look at him up there. He's smiling. There are the gallant Matt and...
You used that picture. You're such a jackass.
There's the gallant Matt and Eric, the producer, and there's our fearless leader,
Oh my God.
Louis Trott. He's giving final absolution to all of us before we go on a tour. And if you scroll down, though, here's the thing that's new. Because we're expecting you to discuss this with us, we have references for you that you can just download. Look at this. You got the official records excerpts, and you go there, and it's got to load up. It takes forever and a day to do it, but you can do it. And so that's so we're going to have that for all of them. Next month in May is Major General Abno Doubleday and the defense of McPherson's Ridge, Seminary Ridge. And these are, ladies and gentlemen, what we are calling, what is he calling them? Decision points. That's the theme of this year's tours. So that's what we're doing. So you don't have to sign up. You just have to show up. We're meeting at Winslow's Monument in the wheat field. That's what we're talking about, the wheat field. If you go to the website, you can see a promo video. That's this one right here with Mikey's smiling face.
Stop it. I was being sarcastic going, you're such a jackass. I can't believe you used
I can't
that.
believe this has
I
been up for
cannot-
2 months and you just noticing
I don't
it now.
pay attention. I wasn't even here.
I know. Just goes to show what a team player you are. Even when you're in England, you can't watch our show. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we hope we see you there. If the weather's not looking great, but it wouldn't be. First of all, Lewis always says, if it ain't raining, you ain't training. And secondly, most of our April tours are some kind of horrendous weather. I think we've had like 2 of them in the past 7 years that are not shitty weather, but that's what makes it fun. It's an experience. Bring your chair and bring your thinking cap and your opinions and your thoughts and your ideas, because we want to hear them. We want to learn from each other. That's what we're doing here at Addressing Gettysburg from now on. So we'll see you on Saturday, April 25th at 10 a.m. Get there earlier because you got to park and stuff and meet us there. But we'll see you there.
You didn't get in the phone queue during the break? Come on. What are you, chicken? 717-420-1978 is the number to prove me wrong. Super chats of $10 or more will be read on the air. Here's Matt.
All right. We are back now, and it's time to Ask a Gettysburg Guide. Stu Dempsey is our guide today. And we've got a bunch of questions. You know, one point, wasn't Lockwood, he was a slave owner, wasn't he?
Yes. In fact, he, in the 1860 census, owned one enslaved woman, 55-year-old woman, apparently a housekeeper, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, he'd owned more than one person, I think, earlier on. I believe his father, if I'm remembering this correctly, I believe his father was a fairly substantial slave owner.
Okay. And what did you say he was from? Delaware? Delaware, okay.
Slave state.
All right.
Not a real super slave state, but a slave state.
But a slave state nonetheless.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Rich Snyder has the first question here. He says, understanding the complexity and importance of seniority and Williams' desire not to supersede Thomas Ruger as brigadier commander or brigade commander, did Williams ever write or say anything complimentary about Lockwood or the troops under his command? Was Lockwood respected by the other generals of the 12th Corps? So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but more specifically, Richard wants to know those things.
Nobody really discusses Lockwood extensively in the 12th Corps because, I mean, he is only a part of the Corps for a blip in their lengthy war history.
Right. So it's not like he gets to know everybody.
No, it's, they didn't all go out for, like martinis or anything. I don't know. Maybe they
go
did.
to O'Rourke's.
Yeah, maybe they did, actually. But no, in all honesty, Green says brief but nice things about Lockwood. That's repeated in Williams' own report. So, they give credit. Lockwood's men did good service. I believe one of the phrases is demonstrated good conduct. So he and his people are getting praise from the 12th Corps. But again, Lockwood comes and goes pretty fast, so there's not a lot there. Even the questionable mention by Williams in his memoir From the Cannon's Mouth about the 1st Potomac Home Brigade advancing in column rather than line, even that is phrased in a way that's sort of like, yeah, look at those rookies,
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but it's not critical.
Right.
It's not like those morons went into, and got people killed unnecessarily.
Yeah.
It's, the new guys, yeah. So I think on the whole, it was a pretty positive experience for the entire command structure, Lockwood and the 12th Corps generals. But again, it's not a topic of extensive conversation, at least not that survived.
Yeah. Actually, John DeMario in the back there said he had a question for you. John, you want to ask your question? Go.
Sure. This kind of goes along with the same theme that you just touched on, and I didn't know if maybe there was a little more to it. And first of all, I wanted to say that Little Ground Top is the best damn cup of coffee I've ever
That's
had
right.
in my life.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Stuart, great show. Appreciate
By the way,
everything.
thanks to John for dinner tonight.
Yes.
Because he brought extra dinner. I bought. That's another story. Well, so thank you for tomorrow's dinner.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Matt. So Stuart, obviously you're a very astute on the German aspect of the skepticism and potential animosity or blatant animosity towards them. With these troops being from Maryland, was there somewhat of an awkward makeup for them? Did they feel like they had to prove their worth or loyalty to the Union? We know Lockwood was a slave owner. James Wallace,
Wallace was a big slave owner, the commander of the Eastern Shore Regiment, yeah.
Yeah, and he resigned in December of '63 because the arming of black troops, if that's correct.
Yes, he resigned in protest over that, yeah.
So if you could just kind of touch on maybe the dynamic of a slave state, Maryland fighting with this Army of the Potomac, and was there any dynamic that made it a little awkward for them?
So, not that I've ever run into. Again, one of the problems we have with both the Maryland regiments in the Gettysburg campaign is they don't leave us with a wealth of sources. Basically, for the Eastern Shore Regiment, you've got two, John Shane and James Wallace, and for the Potomac Home Brigade, you've got two, Malsby's battle report and one other officer's post-war account in the National Tribune newspaper. But there's not a lot to work with there. I would say this much. I would think that since all of these men are volunteers, that maybe that in itself is a pretty good expression of your loyalty. I volunteered to serve my country. I didn't go south. I didn't sit it out. So, that alone is I'm doing my duty, right? My country called and I answered my country. And so I don't think there's a sense of having to prove anything. There was already a Maryland regiment in the 12th Corps, the 3rd Maryland Infantry. Had been in the 12th Corps for a while, and it performed well. And although they don't see a ton of action at Gettysburg, their brigade doesn't. What they did see was perfectly honorable service. So I guess the short answer is no. I really don't think. I don't get any sense that these men feel like, we're coming from this border state that maybe is a little bit iffy. I think these men probably felt themselves to be true patriots, and again, their enlistment alone, and the fact that they didn't desert or anything else, suggests that they're loyal. I don't know if that answered your question particularly, but it's about all I got.
All right, got a thumbs up. That sounds good to me.
Okay.
Nathan Long, he wants to know, did the 1st Potomac Home Brigade fight Confederate Marylanders?
Yeah, that has, and that's certainly been a story for a really long time. Maryland v. Maryland on Culp's Hill. It's not really so clear when you start to look at the limited evidence that we have. Wallace, Colonel Wallace of the Eastern Shore Regiment, he discusses a little bit about, we learned that we were fighting the 1st Confederate Maryland unit, and he also describes burying some of the dead of the Confederate 1st Maryland. I believe the.
Stu, pull that mic closer to you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. So yeah, there's a mention that the color bearers of the First Eastern Shore and the First Maryland Confederate were cousins.
Oh yeah,
apparently.
Yeah.
There's that story anyway. There's at least one officer of the Eastern Shore Regiment that resigned early in the war and went south to join Confederate ranks. So there's a little bit of that. But in terms of actually firing volleys at one another on Culp's Hill, maybe.
Okay.
Given, again, it's a really crowded, small area with both Union and Confederate troops, where we've got a pretty good sense for where the 1st Maryland Confederate Battalion was at various times on the 3rd, and they don't move around a lot. They're pretty static until they take part in the final attack by George Stewart's brigade. It is possible that the right companies of the Eastern Shore could have fired on them, maybe could have fired by the right oblique on them, but it's, again, the evidence isn't really crystal clear. Kind of all depends. Was the 1st Eastern Shore in the breastworks at the moment when the 1st Maryland Confederate launched their attack?
It's one of those things when you're in a battle of that size and you're in that tight of a space, you don't know.
No.
I mean,
you don't care.
It's all lines.
No, you don't care. It's the enemy who's trying to kill you, so you're going to waste him first.
And I think a lot of it is.
Gee, are those our brothers over
there?
there?
Could that have been Billy Bob's third cousin?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's part of our fault of loving maps so much.
Yeah.
Or games where it's like, okay, these guys are against these guys.
Well, and we have to have everything neat.
Yes.
In our minds
This
for us to
regiment
make
fought
sense.
this regiment. It's like, no, these 3 regiments fought another blob, and they didn't care where they were from.
Right.
They're just firing what's in front of them. Doesn't matter if they're mixed regiments or companies or
where they're from or who they are.
Yep.
And we're hoping.
And you rarely get close enough to even know.
Well, yeah, right. And we're hoping. I always wonder this, with the placement of the monuments, and there, you always have to be careful with that because there's a different reason for just about every monument why it is where it is. Yes, some of them are, we know these guys were here. Others are like, well, this was the ground they could purchase at the time to put the monument on, but they were really out there. First day, I'm thinking of like Reynolds Avenue, a lot of those cavalry monuments out there, right? They're all further out where they're fighting. And you look at maps, that's where they are. Yep. You look at the monument, it's like, oh, they're neatly on this ridge here where this beautiful road is. But no, that's not the way it is.
It's even further complicated by the fact that, one great book, Alan Thompson's book, In the Shadow of Round Tops, that just talks about how our memories change.
Yeah,
absolutely.
10, 20, 30 years, these veterans are saying, we fought against that Maryland.
And
and it's not that they're lying. They just have no idea.
This is not apples to apples. I understand this. But my buddies and I got paintball guns years ago, and we went out in the woods by our house and we broke up into teams, right? And now these woods we grew up going into. I knew every deer trail, like everything. I knew this like the back of my head. I used to draw maps of it, and I knew where everything was, right? It was like 3 against 3. The other 2 guys on my team, the other 2 guys on the other team were out. It was down to me and this one other kid. And we're like, he's after me. And I run up this hill and there's a tree that had fallen down, right? So I'm like, I'm hiding behind this bastard, right? Well, I get behind the tree, right? And I didn't know how close he was on my tail or whatever, but he was able to get somewhere where I couldn't see him. But every time I tried to pick my head up, it's right? And finally, I'm like, I'm just going to get up there. And so I go to do it and boom. And I thought the bastard had hit me, thrown a rock at me because it hit so hard on my upper lip. And I feel my upper lip and it's numb, but there's all this goo. And I'm like, oh my God, he did throw a rock at me and I'm busted up. And I'm like, you mother, I'm like yelling at him and everything. And then I look and it's blue and I realize it's the paintball. And I was like, damn, that hurt. And I remember trying a couple weeks later to go back and see evidence of our fighting, with, the paint on the trees or whatever. I could not find that fallen tree because to me at the time in my memory 2 weeks ago, it was the only fallen tree there. Right. But when I go back, I'm like, well, there's 6 fallen trees here and they all look the same size. And I knew where it
and
was.
you knew the woods really well.
I knew the woods
Imagine
very
going
well.
in the middle of nowhere.
No, and that's always my point with, and I'm not saying nothing is marked correctly on the battlefield or anything. And I know, like, you know, it's not one person's word you're going off of, right? It's you know, all the common denominator. Well, then, okay, everybody says this, that, it must be this, right? It's an investigation. But the Battle of Gettysburg was not their only battle, most of these people. And it's not going to be their last unless they're killed in it, right? But like the guys that go on and continue to fight the war, they're going to fight how many more places? And I'm sorry, but to me, in a traumatic moment, a farm looks like a farm. You know, woods look like woods.
They're not committing it to memory. Like, remember where you were on July 2nd.
Because it doesn't become momentous until later.
Yep.
After it's over and you look back and you go, whoa, what the hell did we just
And
go
even
through?
look at it in a smaller point. Look what we talked about today when Stuart was talking about Lockwood on July 2nd. The difference in the report from a private in the front line and an officer were two completely different engagements, but it was the same event.
Same acre of ground, yeah.
Yep.
So they go home and they tell it differently. Which one's right? Neither of them are wrong. That was what that person perceived to have happened.
Well, also with Culp's Hill, I mean, Culp's Hill in particular, monument placement is really problematic there because, well, first off, unit monuments on one corner of the battlefield do not all represent the same moment in time. So when you're driving up, you're driving up the lower summit and you're passing all the monuments on your right to McDougall's Brigade, so 123rd New York, 5th Connecticut, 3rd Maryland, 46th Pennsylvania. Those guys are not where their monuments are on July 3rd when the bullets are flying. It's where they spent a quiet morning and afternoon on July 2nd. It's not where they are on the 3rd. And then with the constant on the upper summit on the morning of July 3rd, the constant relief of units, the constant shuttling of units in and out of the works, you're not always going back to the same section of works. I firmly believe at least the 150th New York and possibly the Eastern Shore Regiment both have occupied different sections of the line at different points in the morning's fighting. They were sent in where they were needed.
Yeah.
Okay. The 102nd New York's out of ammo, so that's where you're going. And then a little later, it's the 29th Ohio's running out of ammunition. Right. That's where we're sending you.
Yeah.
So you can't really rely on that. And then I think the other ingredient we sometimes forget. I mean, we know intellectually that 19th century battlefields are extremely smoky environments, but we don't always translate that when we're out on the battlefield today.
Right.
What can I see right now on a lovely April day versus what can I see after 200,000 rounds have been expended in the course of a morning?
Go on a foggy day. That's what you should do, is go on a foggy day.
Yeah,
right?
or maybe blind drunk or something. I don't know.
Or both.
Stuart and I were talking about the Potomac Home Brigade Regiment and maybe the 20th Connecticut. How do those two collide? How do they go one in front of the other? Because if you stand up on Baltimore Pike today, let's say those houses weren't there, you could see that's a problem.
Yeah.
But if there's an artillery bombardment, like Stuart pointed out in the morning, and that smoke is settling in that low ground, that cut there, where the creek goes through.
Yeah.
You're not going to see anything.
No.
The long story, let's make it short. It's our best guess. We're making best guesses.
It is what it comes down to.
Yeah,
educated guesses. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Stephen Lunsford writes, according to an anecdote from Charles Benton in his book, As Seen from the Ranks, he shares that when excited, General Lockwood was known to stammer. But while under fire, quote, he was never excited and never stammered. In your own research, have you come across any other such accounts on the general's stammering? It's always intriguing when a soldier writes of the characteristics or mannerisms of a commanding officer.
Benton is the only guy who mentions that.
Okay.
For what it's worth, he's writing about 40 years after the war, which does not necessarily mean that his writing is incorrect or his memory is faulty, not necessarily at all. But he is the only guy I've encountered in the brigade who mentioned that. And let's remember, these regiments only serve under Lockwood for a couple of weeks, and they only serve under Lockwood under fire for a day and a half. So his exposure to Lockwood would not have been extensive, but it might have stuck in his head. Yeah, wow, this guy's got this kind of nervous tick going. But I mean, he'd hardly be the only one. Franz Siegel was reasonably well known for, in the moments of greatest excitement, just automatically reverting to German and occasionally confusing his non-German speaking subordinates. A kind of famous episode at the Battle of Newmarket, supposedly, where when things are beginning to crumble, he reverts to German, and all these men in the 12th Virginia are like, huh?
I do that when I get angry, and I've never learned German in my life.
It's
just a
I was
rare
going to say you're
talent.
yelling at me in German.
Yeah,
the other day.
yeah.
What does that mean?
I have no clue.
idea.
I never know.
In fact, most Germans, when they hear it, don't know what I'm saying. It's an old dialect.
They're playing along though.
Naptown Bob says, was the first Maryland Potomac Home Brigade treated similarly to the 126 New York for the debacle at Harper's Ferry?
Not at all.
Were they at Harper's Ferry?
They were at Harper's Ferry.
Okay.
Actually, also the 3rd Potomac Home Brigade was also at Harper's Ferry, so two of their regiments were there. The 126th New York really takes the hit for their reputation, not for the surrender at Harper's Ferry per se, but for the action on Maryland Heights the day before the surrender.
Okay.
They're up on Maryland Heights with some elements. Now, I haven't looked at the Harper's Ferry siege in a while, so if I get this a little wrong, please forgive me. But they're up there with detachments from, I believe, the 32nd Ohio and the 39th New York, which are both experienced regiments. The 126th is brand spanking new. I mean, been in the Army like a month, never drilled beyond a company level. And they're thrown up on the Maryland Heights to face Kershaw's and Barksdale's brigades, so certifiable badasses. And it comes apart. The wheels come off. And big shock. The wheels would have come off for anybody's regiment in that situation when you're that inexperienced. But the 126th and their Colonel Sherrill took a fair amount of crap over that. So it's just being at the siege wasn't necessarily, the black mark on your reputation. It was really the Maryland Heights fight that ruined the reputation of, especially the 126th. So I guess the short answer is no, not really. Right.
Robert Fry asks, now we've already kind of touched on this with the first Maryland, the Maryland versus Maryland guys. But he let me just get his question out here because it's slightly different. Although it's not slightly different. So we'll just go ahead and say, are there any post-war writings from the men in Lockwood's 1st Maryland Regiment about making amends with those in the Confederate 1st Maryland Infantry Battalion unit? Building on that, are there any letters written back home post-battle about these two units meeting at Gettysburg? So we kind of, before we went through it, and we were kind of like, we don't really know.
Yeah. Post-war,
where does
honestly,
that come from?
Yeah, post-war, I honestly don't know if there was any, kumbaya moment or anything. I have no idea. I've never encountered anything for what that is worth. Probably there was some of that after the war. I guess Maryland's a very small state, so But what was the second part of that? I'm sorry.
It says building on that, that was the second part. Building on that, are there any letters written back home? Well, yeah, post-battle about these two units meeting, and then the first part, I guess. Are there any post-war writings from the men in Lockwood's 1st Maryland about making amends with those from the Confederate 1st Maryland?
Okay, so I addressed that latter part already.
Right.
In terms of post-battle correspondence, to the best of my knowledge, the only thing out there is brief mention by Colonel Wallace, 1st Eastern Shore, again about burying the dead of the Maryland Confederate Battalion, and honestly forget where the mention that the color bearers may have been cousins. I forget the source on that.
Right.
But yeah, other than Wallace's brief mentions, I can't think of anything.
Okay.
Again, there's not a lot of post-battle writings from these guys,
right?
Especially the Marylanders. So, yeah.
I would think it would have been a little more momentous to them, but I guess they're post-Gettysburg. Well, the Maryland guys, they're kind of at home, but the New York guys, I mean, I would imagine Gettysburg's kind of like the start of their story.
Well, it is, and they're the only people who write fairly extensively about it. We've got a number of writings by Captain Cogswell that appear. I believe it's in the regimental history and also in the National Tribune, the veterans paper. Benson writes his memoir about his service. But, again, the New Yorkers, yes. The Marylanders, not so much, even though, like I said before, Gettysburg is their only big battle of the war. I mean, it's their bright, shining moment in an otherwise fairly mundane Civil War service.
Yeah.
It's a lot of guard duty and a lot of patrolling and maybe an occasional skirmish. And
I think they stayed in the Army and were active. I think you would have gotten a lot more.
That's
I
quite
think it
possible.
comes down to the request of people wanting to, especially newspapers. A lot of that stuff, people write the newspapers or ask people for their accounts.
Yeah.
Like a great example, and not an exact match, but like the 26th Emergency Regiment.
Yeah.
A few guys write stuff, but if it wasn't for Pennypacker really recording everything and then eventually becoming, governor, probably wouldn't know as much about them either. So it's about, they were in and then they were out. I think a lot of those guys just went back to their lives, and compared to those other regiments, what did they have to say that people wanted to hear about? I mean, I know that sounds kind of unfair to them, but, most people wanted to read about the regiments that did so much.
Yeah,
Sure.
Fought in all the big battles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like we have a phone call from down under. Hello, Grant. How are you? Takes a while to get.
Hello, Matthew. How you going?
There you are, Grant. Good to hear from you. How have you been?
Very well. And how are you, sir?
I'm doing just dandy. Thank you very much. Grant, what is the question you have for our guest, licensed battlefield guide, Stuart Dempsey?
My question for Stewie is...
Stewie.
I'm not answering your question. Sorry. Hang up.
What an a-hole.
Yep,
Stewie.
goodbye.
Come on. You don't do that.
It's an Australian thing.
Yeah, but I'm not in Australia.
We do that with people's names.
To hell with Australia.
Yeah, to hell with Australia.
Grant, ask me your question, and I'll relay it in a
I
polite
agree.
manner to Stu.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Go ahead, Grant.
I don't know if you've covered. I'm sorry, I only just started watching the show. But post-war, how was the relationship between the Maryland soldiers on both sides? Did they finally sort of bury the hatchet, or did they get over it?
Are you kidding me?
was
Did
it
you
tough?
not just hear the last question I asked?
90 seconds ago?
It's
Okay.
literally the last question I asked.
Short answer, no.
Okay.
All right, Grant. Great to hear from you.
Go throw another shrimp on the friggin' Barbie.
A prawn on the Barbie, Grant. Go throw a prawn on the Barbie. Shove it up your ass. All right. Thank you, Grant. All right. There he is. It goes. All right. Well, let's see. Anything else you'd like to add, Stu?
No.
I will never call you Stewie.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew as soon as
Last guy who did has his head on a pike in my front yard. So.
As soon as I heard,
I believe when he says that.
As soon as I heard
there's
that,
a man's head on a pike,
I believe,
and I want to see it.
I'm not messing around.
I'll give you my address after.
Yeah.
I'm not going without friends.
We'll all go.
Please.
We'll all go, but I have to see the head on the pike. As soon as I heard Grant slip into the ooey, I was like, oh boy. Oh boy. And you reacted exactly as I would have hoped and expected. So
only because I didn't have the button that hangs up the phone.
Grant is he's a very big fan of the show. So
I'm sure he's harmless.
He is. Well, he's in Australia.
Yeah.
But he's also harmless. He's a wise ass, and he likes to sometimes do those things, test the boundaries. That's what he likes to do. But anyway, I think that's it for us here. We've completed the story of Lockwood's Brigade, and since this is going out live, if the recordings are corrupt, who cares? Because we have it live. It's archived on YouTube now. So there we go.
Did you start the record?
Oh, I should probably start now. No, it's been blinking the whole time. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching and listening and your questions and your support and everything like that. And we will see you. Actually, I think, Stu, you are you're coming back at the end of May. We're doing Carol's Brigade, if I'm not mistaken.
We are. I'm going to spend the first half of the month guiding in Poland.
That's right. Oh, yes. And let me talk about that real quick. You're guiding in Poland. You're going to Gdansk, Warsaw, Krakow. This is all Mikey's Polish.
Yeah, homeland.
Yeah, this is Mikey's homeland. Battleground Historical Tours is the name of your company. It's battlegroundhistorytours.com. And you go all over the place, all over the United States, Canada even, right? You go up to Canada?
I haven't actually included any Canadian sites yet, although I'm thinking about the Quebec, the Canadian incursion, the Quebec siege, 1776. Thinking about that one. No, I like this coming year, in addition to Poland, I'm conducting a tour later this summer of the Lake Champlain Valley and the Revolution. It is the 250th anniversary, and I've done tours up there before. It's a fabulous combination of some of the most gorgeous scenery in the eastern United States, combined with a place that's just incredibly rich in 18th century military history. So we'll be doing Fort Ticonderoga, Saratoga, Hubbardton, Mount Independence, Crown Point, etc. And then in October, I'm doing another Normandy tour. That one's sold out. Although I there's always a cancellation. Somebody's life always gets interrupted by something. So if anybody might be interested in a tour of Normandy in the first part of October, you can drop me a line via my website, and I'd be happy to put you on a contacts list if somebody does cancel.
How do you stuff all that information in your head? Did you always have like a steel trap mind, or?
Well, I did up until about, a few years ago. Seems to be more like an aluminum trap mind now. Verging on
it's like a colander.
More the colander. But no, I don't know. It's just I've been at the military history thing for a really, really long time. So
how long have you been a guide?
23 years.
23 years. So what'd you do before that?
Oh, did a few things. The common denominator being I pretty much hated them all. I was an insurance claims adjuster for several years.
Okay.
Dreadful job, as anyone who has ever done that job knows. It's just bags full of stress. One day they came in and said, we're closing the regional office. And I said, yeah, and I left. That was it. Seriously.
You were relieved.
Gone.
Yeah.
And you know what? Within 2 weeks, the chronic migraines didn't happen anymore. So
isn't that amazing what stress does to the body?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I was a manager at a hotel here in town for a while, back in the
Which
early
hotel?
90s. Well, it's had about 9 names now, but it was the Comfort Inn when it opened in 1990, out there in York Street by the Days Inn.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's been I don't know how many others since. But
know
when
that.
they first opened, I was the manager there for a while.
That's cool.
So I've done some different crap, most of which was not very rewarding, but this is much more rewarding.
Yeah, because you get to be on this show. That's why.
Oh, that's really the main reason. I mean, I know 23 years ago I was thinking, well, maybe there'll be this thing called a podcast in the future.
Right. Maybe I'll get to go on something that hasn't been invented yet.
Yeah. And then I'll spend 3 hours of my day, and you won't even record it, and then I'll come back and do it again.
That's right, because I am a certifiable idiot. Yeah.
No. Well, I appreciate you coming and doing that. And again, that's battlegroundhistorytours.com. And you can go and sign up for tours there, apparently all over the world.
Next year is going to be Battle of the Bulge.
Nice.
And also going to do it's a Great Battles theme, which will include Waterloo, Ypres for the First World War, Wipers if you prefer, and Operation Market Garden.
Oh, cool.
So we're going to do all 3 of those in about a 9-day span.
Wow. And you do these all, like, you don't have other guides with you or something?
On some topics, I do.
Okay.
For example, First World War, I'm functional at First World War, but I would not be able to guide a First World War battlefield to my own standards.
Do you know Ian Isherwood at the college? He took Pete Carmichael's place.
I know who he is. I don't know him.
He's a World War I guy. You should.
But I have a gentleman who lives over there half a year, an English fellow who I've been using for years, and he's terrific and always gets really good reviews. So, and for Operation Market Garden, I'll be using a Dutch guide that I've worked with in the past. So I don't do 100% my own guiding. I do a lot of it, but I don't do all of it. I know the topics that I am limited on, and I know the standard, the quality of guiding I want. So a lot of times that means getting somebody who's more of a specialist than I am in an area.
I've always believed that knowing your limits is the key to success.
It is.
And not being ashamed.
As Dirty Harry said, man's got to know his limitations.
Yeah. And there's no shame in getting somebody who's better than you at something to come along and be a part of it. That's why I have Mikey here.
I was just gonna say, that's why I'm
well,
here.
I mean it. You were going to do it as a joke, but I mean it.
Oh,
and
that's nice of you.
Stu, thank you very much for coming out.
You're welcome.
Mike, thank you very much. It's good to have you back. Welcome back. You did a great job tonight. And Tad, thank you back there. John, thanks again. And the Colonel, I guess, went to bed, but that's it there. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.
Addressing Gettysburg's Ask a Gettysburg Guide is produced by Matt Callery, Mikey B. Bariski, and Tad Scase. Hosted by Matt Callery, featuring Mikey B. and Court Nicker. Engineered by Tad Scase. Guests booked by Dave Bussiere of TR Historical. Broadcasting from and recorded at the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios. Thanks for listening.
Instead of spiral drink down there and pay the reckoning on the nail, no man forgets to go to jail for Gary Lord glory. Instead of spiral drink down there and pay the reckoning on the nail, no man forgets to go to jail for Gary Lord glory.
Copyright 2026, Addressing Gettysburg LLC, all rights reserved.